The House will be in order. Pursuant to the order of the House of January 9, 2024, the chair will now recognize members from lists submitted by the majority and minority leaders for morning hour debate. The chair will alternate recognition between the parties and time equally allocated between the parties and each member, other than the majority and minority leaders and the minority whip, limited to 5 minutes, but in no event shall debate continue beyond 1:50 p.m. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Joyce, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on Saturday night, the Israeli people were deliberately and brutally attacked when the Iranian regime launched over 300 missiles and drones meant to terrorize and kill civilians. If it were not for the defensive technologies that were developed here in the United States and the heroism of Israeli, British, French, and Jordanian pilots who took to the air to shoot down Iranian drones, these attacks could have resulted in far greater devastation and loss of life. It was President Ronald Reagan who said that we must secure peace through strength and that weakness only invites aggression. Through his long history of appeasement, Joe Biden has failed to deter Iranian threats and ultimately has jeopardized our safety. It is time to send a clear message to Iran and its terrorist proxies that the United States stands firmly with Israel, our greatest ally and the only democracy in the Middle East. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, in March, Customs and Border Patrol encountered more than 240,000 illegal immigrants attempting to enter the United States, and more than 50,000 of those were at ports of entry and on our northern border. In 2023, the Swanton border sector in Vermont saw a surge in illegal crossings, surpassing the combined total of the past 11 years. The truth is in the data. Right now, every state is a border state. President Biden cannot afford to wait any longer to take action. It is time for President Biden to address this crisis that has allowed more than 5,000 illegal immigrants a day to enter these great United States. This surge is a result of President Biden and Secretary Mayorkas' open border policies. The fact is, ending the Remain in Mexico policy and returning to a catch and release program that allows illegal immigrants to wander our country freely, the Biden administration has put all Americans in danger. It is time to secure our border, and it's time for the president to put American communities ahead of illegal immigrants. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield.
The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Connecticut, Mr. Courtney, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, a couple days ago on Saturday in the city of Hartford, Connecticut, the capital city of the state of Connecticut, 60,000 people gathered to celebrate the parade that was held in honor of the UConn men's college basketball team, which, again, just a mere week ago on Monday, swept over the University of Purdue, a very good team, and secured back-to-back national titles. Mr. Speaker, that's the first time that's happened since 2007 when Florida University was able to do back-to-back titles. College basketball has changed a lot since then. The new rules allow players to transfer from one university to another with no loss of eligibility. The NBA continues to recruit even freshmen who play in the ranks of college basketball. So the ability of a university to repeat because of all of these factors that undermine continuity was really, I think, extraordinary that the UConn men were able to, after losing 3 players from last year's team to the NBA, losing other players to the portal, was still able to reload, and under the amazing leadership of Coach Danny Hurley, was able to dominate both the Big East regular season tournament and then obviously the Final Four out in Phoenix, Arizona. Again, a great collection of players, some of whom, again, are going to be leaving soon. Donovan Clingan from Bristol, Connecticut, 7'2" sophomore. Tristan Newton, who won Big East Player of the Year, just, again, an amazing guard and just going to do great things when he moves up to the next level. Again, the women, at the same time, overperformed in their side of NCAA basketball. Again, this is a program that has been to the Final Four 23 times. This is a program that has won the national title 11 times. And Coach Gino Auriemma, who, again, is a genius, was able to cobble together a team when they had 6 players, some of their top players who suffered year-ending injuries, and somehow make it to the Final Four again. And they battled a great team from University of Iowa led by Caitlin Clark to the final seconds, showing again what an incredible competitive spirit they have. Mr. Speaker, there's still some debate that you see with the sports pundits about who is this real blue buds of college basketball and which is the capital of the world for college basketball. There is no question Storrs, Connecticut, the home of the UConn Huskies, which I have the honor to represent, is clearly the college basketball capital of the world. Again, the 2 programs have been to the Final Four in the same year 5 times. The men have won their 6th title, combined with 11 from the women. That's 17 titles. There is not a single program anywhere close all across the country to achieve that greatness. So again, it was a wonderful day on Saturday. The players deserved all of the cheering and praise that they received. And I have no doubt when Coach Hurley got up there and said his goal right now is to do a 3-peat, people better keep their eye on the UConn Huskies. Mr. Speaker, over the weekend, the country of Israel was struck by Iran, again, with missiles that were launched from the territory of Iran into Israel. An amazing international coalition came together to strike down that drone and missile attack. Our U.S. pilots and reconnaissance crews were essential parts of making that happen. The equipment that they used in terms of Iron Dome, Arrow, David Sling, which again are defensive missiles that assisted in terms of knocking down almost all of them, was a great achievement. Mr. Speaker, we have a bill pending that came out of the Senate 2 months ago, a supplemental funding bill to reload for countries like Israel, to reload for countries like Ukraine, who are under relentless attack by Vladimir Putin, to help Taiwan in terms of the coercion and pressure that they're feeling from the People's Republic of China. We need to pass that bill. It passed 70 to 28 in the Senate, a huge lopsided majority. We can do the same here in the House tonight. And we can make sure that these attacks that are happening to countries, sovereign democracies, are going to have the adequate tools to defend themselves. That's the role that U.S. has played in the past. We were the arsenal of democracy in World War II. Today, we can help defend our friends. It is time for Speaker Johnson to bring this measure to the floor. Let the House work its will. Send this bill to the president, who said he will sign it tonight, and make sure that our allies and friends get the help they need. I yield back.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Alford, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, today I rise to honor our April Veteran of the Month, Craig Alderman, a Vietnam-era veteran. Craig and his family have dedicated their lives to this country. Their call to serve America has made a lasting impact, and we are so proud of all he does to help fellow veterans thrive in Missouri's 4th Congressional District. His father and 4 uncles served in World War II, and while both of his sons are currently serving our nation, Craig grew up on a farm until he left for college at the University of Massachusetts, where he enlisted in the Air Force as an ROTC cadet. After completion of ground school, he obtained the rank of private pilot through the ROTC program and was further commissioned as a lieutenant in the United States Air Force. He then attended flight school and was pinned the silver wings of an Air Force pilot. Craig diligently worked his way through rankings and has earned positions as an instructor for the new B-1 aircraft, attained the rank of captain, and built over 2,800 hours of flight time in the B-52. He is qualified to fly in any multi-engine jet and was selected for promotion to major. Though he continues to earn multiple medals and awards in the Air Force as a pilot, Craig is most proud of the initial silver wings that he earned. Since retirement, Craig has founded Quail and Upland Wildlife Federation, the only veteran-founded conservation in the United States that works with all aspects of wildlife and allows local chapters to retain the largest revenue of any conservation organization. He continues to teach, mentor, and assist all aspiring students and veterans in the great state of Missouri. His sacrifice and ongoing commitment to our country's values exemplifies what it means to truly be an American. Thank you for all you do, Craig, and thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize our April Small Business of the Month, Kleinschmidt's Western Store, providing the Midwest with Western apparel and accessories of the highest quality. This household name has been family-owned and operated since 1969. Over 54 years ago, the founders, Irvin and Catherine Kleinschmidt, established a mission supporting our local community while providing unparalleled inventory and exceptional customer service. This mission is carried out daily now by new owner Sarah Montgomery and her family. This 30,000 square foot building holds more than 30,000 boots and 200 name brands. Customers are drawn to the extensive stock of inventory that suits any occasion. Higginsville, Missouri is proud to be home to this incredible family-owned and operated business. Their incredible inventory, 250-plus mounted animals, and unique accessories make it an exceptional Western supply stop in mid-Missouri. We are so excited, Mr. Speaker, to recognize their hard work and incredible efforts to supply Missouri's 4th Congressional District and visitors from all over America. Congratulations to Sarah Montgomery and Kleinschmidt's on being our Small Business of the Month. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the Chair declares the House in recess until 2 p.m.
The House will be in order. The prayer will be offered by Chaplain Kibben.
Would you pray with me? Immortal and invisible God, we yearn to see you. Open our eyes that we would know how you reveal yourself to us through the love you have created in us, redeemed in us, and sustain in us this day. Help us to realize that though we have never seen you, you have taught us that when we love one another, you live in us, and your love is made complete in us. This is knowledge that far exceeds what we can see with our eyes. So let us look beyond the things we see, look past the differences and the difficulties, and look into the heart of even our adversary. In them may we see you, then know and rely on the love you so desire to share with us through others. As you have so loved us, may we accept our responsibility to love one another. And may we discover within them the love you reveal to us when we love those around us. God, you are love. Let us live in that love, that your love would live in us, and that we would live in you. We pray these prayers in your revealed name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Chaplain Kibben. The chair has examined the journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the House the approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the journal stands approved. Please be seated. Please remain standing as the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by a gentlewoman from Iowa, Ms. Miller-Mix. Sorry about that.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now please be seated. The chair will entertain requests for 1-minute speeches. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Iowa seek recognition?
I ask for unanimous consent to the House to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to vehemently condemn Iran's recent attack on Israel and express unwavering support for our closest ally in the Middle East, Israel, as they confront forces of evil. Over the weekend, Iran launched a massive missile and drone attack directly at Israel for the first time in history. These heinous attacks threaten to further destabilize the region, risking an all-out war between Israel and Iran. By the grace of God, Israel's Iron Dome system intercepted 99% of the missiles and drones aimed at them. However, the looming threat from Iran persists. Now, more than ever, it is imperative for the United States to stand by our ally and provide them with the necessary support to thwart bad actors who undermine their sovereignty, including Iran and the Iran-funded terrorist groups Hamas and Hezbollah. With that, I yield.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Indiana seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
I rise today with a heavy heart to pay tribute to a remarkable leader of the Scottsburg community, former Mayor Bill Graham. Just a few weeks ago, my hometown suffered a great loss with his passing. Mayor Graham was not just a public servant, he was the heart and soul of our small town. His unwavering dedication to Scottsburg and its residents was evident in every decision he made and action he took. Whether it was working tirelessly to attract new businesses, advocating for improved infrastructure, or simply lending a compassionate ear to those in need, Mayor Graham embodied the true spirit of service. His legacy of kindness, integrity, and selflessness will continue to inspire us all. As we mourn the loss of Mayor Graham, let us also celebrate the extraordinary life he lived and the profound impact he had on our beloved Scottsburg. My thoughts and prayers are with his family, friends, and the entire community during this difficult time. Thank you.
Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the chair declares the House in recess, subject to the call of the chair.
House will be in order.
Chair will receive a message.
Mr. Speaker, messages from the Senate.
Mr. Speaker,
Secretary.
I have been directed by the Senate to inform the House that the Senate has agreed to House Joint Resolution 98, providing for congressional disapproval under Chapter 8 of Title V, United States Code, of the rules submitted by the National Labor Relations Board relating to standard for determining joint employer status.
Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the Chair will postpone further proceedings today on motions to suspend the rules on which a recorded vote or the yeas and nays are ordered, or votes objected to under Clause 6 of Rule 20. The House will resume proceedings on postponed questions at a later time. For what purpose does the gentleman from Missouri seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 6408 to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to terminate the tax-exempt status of terrorist-supporting organizations as amended. The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar Number 270, H.R. 6408. A bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to terminate the tax-exempt status of terrorist-supporting organizations.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Smith, and the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Schneider, each will control 20 minutes. The Chair recognizes the gentleman from Missouri.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and submit extraneous materials on the bill under consideration.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in support of H.R. 6408, bipartisan legislation introduced by Ways and Means members David Kustoff and Brad Schneider. This common sense bill revokes the tax-exempt status of entities that have been found to be providing material support to terrorist organizations within the past 3 years. This legislation is more important than ever, given Iran's attacks on Israel this weekend. It is thanks to the strong alliance that exists between the U.S. and Israel that our ally was able to defend itself. However, this legislation speaks to the broader efforts America must undertake to ensure our support for Israel and to counteract the forces of violence and terrorism that threaten our ally and our own homeland. There are multiple fronts in this battle against terrorism, and this bill addresses one that perhaps does not get as much attention as it should. As part of our aggressive oversight efforts, the Ways and Means Committee has been examining the behavior of U.S.-based organizations that enjoy generous tax exemptions and other benefits under our tax code. That investigation included a hearing in November of last year following the horrific attacks on Israel by Hamas terrorists. During that hearing, one witness, a terrorism financing expert, remarked on how this legislation would serve as a valuable tool to not just the Treasury Department, but the Department of Justice and the FBI to identify and disrupt terrorism-related activities on U.S. soil. We must continue to look into the actions of certain tax-exempt groups that are suspected of financing the activities of known terrorist organizations like Hamas. One example is the Holy Land Foundation. This tax-exempt organization funneled over $12 million in donations from Americans to fund Hamas before it was shut down by the U.S. government in the early 2000s. We also suspect that there are other groups that are operating in the United States that are providing material support to known terrorist organizations, including Hamas. It should go without saying that America's tax code should not be used to support or finance violent terrorism around the world. However, we have to be vigilant in the face of groups that seek to exploit the generosity of the American people and American taxpayers. We should ensure they cannot funnel resources to those that target civilians and harm our citizens and our allies. I call on all my colleagues to support this legislation, and I reserve the balance of my time.
On reserves, the gentleman from Illinois is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of H.R. 6408, and I am proud to support this important legislation today and proud that it is being brought to the floor in a bipartisan way. I'm proud to have worked to bring this to the floor with my fellow Ways and Means colleague, Representative David Kustoff from Tennessee. As was mentioned, this past weekend, Iran launched an unprecedented attack on Israel for the very first time from Iranian territory, firing cruise and ballistic missiles as well as suicide attack drones. Thankfully, again as was noted, a coalition of Israeli, U.S., U.K., Jordanian, French, and other allies coordinated a remarkable defense, defeating 99% of the missiles and drones before they were able to reach their intended targets. This achievement reflects the power of alliances we have worked incredibly hard to build and need to work to always maintain. Iran, on the other hand, is aligned with groups such as Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Gaza, the Houthis in Yemen, and militias in Iraq and Syria. Iran is the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism, backing a broad group of terrorist organizations in the region and across the world. In fact, just last week, a court in Argentina concluded that it was Iran that planned the fatal attack against the Jewish Community Center in 1994, 30 years ago, and the court declared it a crime against humanity. The alliances we create must be able to stand up to the horrific alliances that Iran is trying to build. And that's why this legislation is so important. As the attacks of October 7th highlighted, we must be doing everything we can to assist allies like Israel, to disempower the enemies who seek to do not just our allies harm, in the case of Hamas, to destroy the Jewish state and kill the Jewish people, but to also attack the United States. And this was made even clearer this weekend when Iran launched its multifaceted assault on Israel. That's why Speaker Johnson must bring the Senate-passed legislation providing for Israeli security assistance, as well as funding to help our allies in Ukraine and Taiwan. We have to have the Senate bill come to the floor for a House so it can immediately go to the President's desk for signature to assist these allies who are facing these threats. The Senate passed it in a deeply bipartisan vote, and I have no doubt it would have the votes to pass in the House if the Speaker would just bring it to the floor. We cannot dither or wait. The Iranian attacks over the weekend demonstrate the serious urgency with which we must act. And anything less than the passage of the Senate-passed aid bill will be grossly insufficient. As members of the House Ways and Means Committee, it is our job to be good stewards of the tax code, to ensure its faithful enforcement, and to empower the Treasury Department to go after tax cheats. As my colleague mentioned, we must look into the acts of groups like the Holy Land Foundation and others who are potentially providing material support for terrorist groups. We must do everything we can to cut off from financing groups like Hamas and other terrorist organizations, and errant nonprofit organizations that have been prosecuted for funneling money to Hamas and others. These organizations must be held accountable for providing material support to terrorist organizations. And as this legislation makes clear, these organizations must never be allowed to enjoy the privilege of tax-exempt status. Financiers who exploit tax-exempt status to hide their nefarious work behind nonprofit organizations must be held accountable. And doing so plays an important role in our work to combat the financing of terrorist organizations like Hamas. This bill ensures Treasury has the tools necessary to do exactly that, while also providing thoughtful safeguards that protect due process. That's why I'm proud to be able to bring this bill to the floor today. I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Missouri is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield as much time as he may consume to the sponsor of this legislation, the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Kustoff.
Gentleman recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I do want to thank Chairman Jason Smith, not only for his leadership in this legislation, this bill, but also for his support. H.R. 6408, it's an important bipartisan piece of legislation that will revoke the tax-exempt status for any organization that provides financial support or resources to designated terrorist groups such as Hamas or Hezbollah. And I do want to thank my colleague, Representative Brad Snyder, for joining me in introducing what I think is a very important bill. There's no doubt, Mr. Speaker, that since Hamas's barbaric attack on Israel, we've seen a dramatic rise in anti-Semitism and, frankly, anti-Israel motivated attacks here at home and around the world. In fact, we saw it here in the United States today. Israel's recent attack on our ally Israel was a stark reminder of why we must confront Iran and its terrorist proxy groups. These same groups have also increased attacks on American troops in the region. Acts of terror anywhere in the world, they will not be tolerated. Now, a crucial pillar in the global fight against terrorism is dismantling the financial networks of terrorist organizations. Without access to resources and funding, terrorist organizations are seriously restricted in their ability to carry out attacks in the very first place. Recent reports indicate that there are U.S.-based nonprofits that are suspected of providing support and funding to terrorist groups. That's an amazing statement to make. But many of these organizations, they have special 501c tax-exempt status, which allows their donors to claim a tax deduction. To put it plainly, domestic financiers of terrorism are currently being subsidized by U.S. taxpayer dollars. And let me be very clear, Mr. Speaker, no American should receive a tax benefit for funding terrorism. Right now, our ability to crack down on tax-exempt organizations that support terrorism is frankly inadequate. Doing so under current law requires a time-consuming bureaucratic process that has sometimes prevented federal authorities from acting. And that's why we introduced this crucial legislation that we'll be voting on hopefully later today. This legislation will authorize the United States Treasury to revoke the tax-exempt status of any organization deemed to have provided material support or resources to a designated terrorist group within the past 3 years. Material support, it includes financing, services, training, any tangible or intangible aid that helps terrorist groups advance their objectives. Under no circumstances should organizations that support terrorism be allowed to receive preferential treatment under the United States tax code. This bill, Mr. Speaker, is a crucial step towards dismantling the financial networks of terrorist organizations across the globe, including Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. I urge all my colleagues, Mr. Speaker, to support this important bipartisan piece of legislation that will bring us one step closer to eradicating terrorism around the world. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I thank you, and I yield back.
The yields. The gentleman from Missouri is recognized.
Reserve.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Illinois is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to yield as much time as he may consume to the gentleman from Connecticut, Congressman Larson.
And from Connecticut is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to first and foremost commend Brad and David for their incredible work, and also point out that it's not often when you bring out a piece of legislation that you author that you get an opportunity to have your mother in the audience and observe, well, that that legislation is about to be voted on, as it was in the committee, and I commend Chairman Smith. This is an important piece of legislation, and as David was just saying, no one should ever receive a tax benefit for aiding and abetting terrorists. It's just absurd, but sometimes it takes common sense, practical individuals to stand up and make sure that we get this right, and I commend both of these gentlemen for their outstanding work. I also thank and want to thank Mr. Schneider for bringing this up. What we experienced on Saturday was incredible, but demonstrates when nations stick together in common bond as allies against terrorism and terrorist attack, good things can transpire and happen. The attack on Israel on Saturday, to have been thwarted in the way that it was by both Israel, the United States, and our allies, the world was taking notice. But as Mr. Schneider pointed out, the world is also taking notice this weekend on what's transpiring in the Ukraine. Imagine during this same time, 130 drones, 80 missiles, 700 bombs, just in last week alone, were directed at the people of Ukraine. The supplemental the president asked for back in October, the Senate passed a supplemental bill more than 2 months ago. That bill is sitting in this chamber, waiting for Congress, the House of Representatives, to stand up on behalf of the Ukrainian people, on behalf of our allies. The world is watching while the House of Representatives dithers. People's lives are at stake. This is nothing short of a catastrophic tragedy for the people of Ukraine, as they must watch aghast as the House of Representatives sits and does not take action to come to their aid and relief. It's long overdue, as this legislation does, for us to act in a bipartisan basis. There is no question, America, that if this bill, the supplemental bill, is brought to the floor, that's been passed by the Senate, that sits here waiting for our approval, will pass overwhelmingly and bipartisanly. Stop holding the supplemental back. Bring it forward. Provide the people of the Ukraine the relief they need. Provide the humanitarian relief for the Palestinians. Make sure that Israel and Taiwan get the fortification and support that they need from the American government. That is our responsibility. I don't know how people can go home and look in the mirror knowing that a valued ally of ours has put so much on the line and is standing up to Putin, standing up to a dictator, standing up to a tyrant who's using the same formula as Adolf Hitler. Rise up, Congress. Do your job. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, David, for your bill.
I reserve. The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Missouri is recognized.
We're prepared to close.
Gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Illinois is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I have no further speakers at this time. I'm prepared to close.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I want to thank my friend, John Larson, for his passionate words, his urgent plea to pass the essential national security legislation that will bring aid to our allies in Ukraine, in Israel, and in Taiwan. Enjoying tax-exempt status under Section 501 of the tax code is indeed a privilege. As good stewards of the U.S. tax code, it is our duty to ensure the Treasury Department has the tools it needs to enforce this section. At a time of great threat to our allies, and in particular to Israel, from Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran, we must exercise all powers at our disposal to constrain funding for these terrorist organizations, including combating errant nonprofit organizations based here in the United States who are providing material support for these groups overseas. I again want to thank my colleague, Representative Kustoff, for his partnership and work on this legislation. I want to thank Ranking Member Neal and Chairman Smith for your leadership. And I urge all of my colleagues to not only support this legislation, but also, as we have said, to support the essential security funding that came from the Senate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back the balance of my time.
Yields. The gentleman from Missouri is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself the remainder of my time.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The United States must use every tool in our toolbox to combat organizations that threaten America and our allies like Israel. That includes going after the flow of money and resources from U.S.-based so-called charitable organizations to the terrorist groups that murder civilians around the world. We cannot turn a blind eye to entities that support terrorism and known terrorist groups while exploiting our tax code to cover their tracks and pursue their malicious goals. It is unacceptable for any organization to receive taxpayer support while they are funneling millions of dollars to Hamas, an organization responsible for the horrific attacks against the people of Israel on October 7th. We must do more to ensure such groups are not able to operate under the cover of our tax code. I urge all my colleagues to vote yes on this measure, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 6408 as amended? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, two-thirds being in the affirmative.
Mr. Speaker.
Does the gentleman from Missouri seek recognition?
On that, I demand the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. All those in favor of taking this vote by yeas and nays will rise and remain standing until counted. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed. Gentleman from North Carolina seek recognition.
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 5923, the Iran-China Energy Sanctions Act of 2023, as amended.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar Number 272, H.R. 5923. A bill to impose restrictions on correspondent and payable through accounts in the United States with respect to Chinese financial institutions that conduct transactions involving the purchase of petroleum or petroleum products from Iran.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. McHenry, and the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Gottheimer, each will control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from North Carolina.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on this bill.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of H.R. 5923, the Iran-China Energy Sanctions Act, sponsored by the gentleman from New York, Mr. Lawler. Currently, Iran is subject to a comprehensive set of sanctions. We know there are loopholes. Under current law, the President is required to blacklist foreign financial institutions that undertake significant transactions with sanctioned Iranian banks. However, we know that these significant transactions are leaving much of the country's energy trade untouched. Last year, Iran's oil exports rose by 50%, reaching a 5-year high. Most of these exports went to China. Mr. Lawler's bill makes clear that any petroleum-related transaction between Iran and China, no matter how small, will put Chinese banks at risk of being sanctioned. Closing this loophole is essential to ensuring China's financial institutions begin to finally crack down on this illicit oil trade. Additionally, I'm pleased to see this legislation includes a proposal offered by Mr. Foster of Illinois. When we reported this legislation in November, Mr. Foster and Mr. Lawler discussed the inclusion of tougher sanctions to target Iran's sales of unmanned aerial vehicles, or UAVs. This is now included in the text we are considering today. News of this weekend's actions by Iran against our most sacred ally in the world, Israel, is a good example of why we need this law and this bill. Iran has become a major supplier of UAV technologies to Russia and other rogue regimes. We see this in Ukraine. We saw that of the targeting of Israel this weekend. And providing the Ayatollahs with funds by these UAV sales, they can be recycled for terrorism purposes. The sooner we put an end to these exports, the better. And again, I want to thank Mr. Lawler for his leadership on authoring this bill, and I urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to support it. And with that, I will now yield to the gentleman from New York, Mr. Lawler, for as much time as he may consume.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your leadership in getting this bill to the floor. And I want to thank my colleague from New Jersey, Mr. Gottheimer, my co-lead on this bill. I rise in support of this legislation, H.R. 5923, the Iran-China Energy Sanctions Act. Iran is exporting around 1.5 million barrels of petroleum per day, its highest level in 4 years. Around 80% of these exports go to China, providing Tehran with revenues that keep their coffers filled and enable Iran's sponsorship of terrorism abroad, including backing Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis. Make no mistake, the October 7th attack on Israel would not have been possible without Iranian support. And this weekend's brazen assault on Israel demonstrates Iran's intentions have not wavered. They want to eradicate the state of Israel from the face of the earth. My bill targets independent Chinese oil refiners, so-called teapots, which have been driving China's purchases of Iranian crude. Unlike state-owned refiners that have retreated from the market, teapots are less exposed to blocking sanctions and deal in more limited quantities. However, teapots aren't completely beyond our reach. The United States also wields secondary sanctions that punish foreign financial institutions that work with Iran's banks in order to deal in Iranian crude. This is where the bill comes in. While these teapots may not have economic ties to the U.S. that would make them wary of sanctions, Chinese and other foreign financial institutions that work with teapots do deal with the U.S. financial system. Therefore, my bill expands the law's definition to ensure that any dealings they have with Iran's sanctioned financial institutions, including the Iranian Central Bank, will lead to the closure of their correspondent accounts in our country. These secondary sanctions complement the SHIP Act, a bill I sponsored that would impose sanctions on ports and refineries that take in petroleum from Iran. The House passed the SHIP Act in October and has been waiting for Senate Democrats to take up the bill ever since. It's critical that the Senate bring this bill and the SHIP Act up for votes. Enough is enough. We cannot let Iran continue in its efforts to destroy Israel, establish regional dominance, and destabilize the entire free world. And addressing their oil trade revenues is perhaps the best way to accomplish this. This common sense, bipartisan piece of legislation would do just that and would significantly reduce Iran's ability to project power in the region, fund terrorist groups, and attack our closest ally, Israel, both on its own or through its proxies. I yield back.
The gentleman yields. The gentleman from North Carolina is recognized.
I reserve.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in support of my bipartisan bill, the Iran-China Energy Sanctions Act, to hold two members of the axis of evil, some of our greatest, most dangerous adversaries, the governments of Iran and China, accountable for their nefarious activities. I'm very proud to lead this legislation with my fellow Problem Solvers Caucus member, the gentleman from New York, Mr. Lawler. China, and I want to thank the chairman as well, who always does a phenomenal job on the committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. China is Iran's biggest customer of oil and a major supplier of Iran's missile and drone program. Despite strict U.S. sanctions designed to curb the Iranian regime's oil trade, China has tripled its imports of Iranian oil over the past 2 years. As we speak, Iran is using its oil trade with China to bring in a staggering $150 million per day in revenue. By importing millions of barrels of oil a day, China keeps the Iranian regime in business and provides crucial funds for Tehran's chaos agenda, including missile and nuclear weapons development. But China isn't just providing indirect funding. Reporting last year indicated that China is considering supplying Iran with ammonia, a key chemical compound used to propel ballistic missiles. Just 3 days after an unprecedented attack, when Iran launched more than 300 drones, ballistic and cruise missiles at our key democratic ally Israel, this partnership should sound major alarms. If all of this wasn't concerning enough, China also disregards Iran's backing of terror groups and their proxies, including the Houthis, Hezbollah, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and of course, Hamas. Last month, Chinese diplomats met with Hamas after they brutally killed more than 1,200 innocent babies, children, men, women, and the elderly, including Americans, and said absolutely nothing about its barbaric attack on October 7th. Unlike China, we cannot and should not stand by in the face of terrorism. We must vehemently oppose terrorist sympathizers, sponsors, and supporters in all forms. That's why I'm also supporting H.R. 6408, which would amend the tax code to terminate the tax-exempt status of terror-supporting nations, including those who cheer on and provide material support on Iran and its proxies. And I want to thank my colleague, Mr. Schneider, for his phenomenal leadership, Mr. Kustoff. Hamas relies on support from the Iranian regime, the leading state sponsor of terror. As Iran deepens its ties to China, we are reminded that they cannot be trusted. Iran has directly or through their terrorist proxies killed hundreds of Americans and attacked our bases and our allies in the region. All of this is why we must pass the bipartisan Iran-China Energy Sanctions Act to cut off sources of funding to Iran. This bipartisan legislation, which unanimously passed the House Financial Services Committee, expands sanctions to cover Chinese financial institutions that purchase petroleum products from Iran. The bill also requires an annual determination as to whether Chinese financial institutions have engaged in sanctionable conduct. We must continue to support and we must continue to sanction those who are involved in the import of Iranian oil, including financial institutions. This bill will do just that. The Iran-China Energy Sanctions Act is urgently needed to cut off and deny resources to the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism. China can no longer remain Iran's top customer. I will continue to fight against Iran's growing influence and make sure we do everything in our power to protect the U.S. and its allies, including Israel, from Iran. I hope my colleagues on both sides of the aisle will join us to support this common sense, bipartisan legislation. I now yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Illinois, my friend and a great leader, Mr. Foster.
One's recognized.
Thank you, Representative Gottheimer, and as well as Chair McHenry, Representatives Lawler, and to my Republican Democratic colleagues who've made this bill come to the floor. I rise in support of H.R. 5923, the Iran-China Energy Sanctions Act. Thanks to Representative Lawler's bipartisan efforts, this legislation now includes an amendment that I proposed during the Financial Services Committee's consideration of this bill, which would empower the administration to go after Iran's production of unmanned aerial vehicles, or drones, that are now being used against our allies abroad. It is essential for us to work aggressively to cut off the flow of money that Iran, a known sponsor of terrorist groups like Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis, is using to fund violence and disrupt commerce around the world. Just last weekend, Iran sent more than 300 drones to attack Israel. According to the Atlantic Council, it is a steady supply of Iranian drones that allows Russia to continue its intensive bombing campaign against Ukraine. We also know that Iran is building drones and sharing its technology and expertise with its proxies in the Middle East. Drones and related technologies are changing the tactics used on the modern battlefield. They can be deployed in large numbers, as they were in Israel last weekend, in an attempt to overwhelm air defenses and strike critical infrastructure far from the front lines. Small and commercially available drones are also being used and converted to carry munitions capable of inflicting significant damage at relatively low cost. This legislation will crack down on the financing that makes Iran's support of our adversaries possible. Specifically, the language that I drafted will empower the Treasury to sanction any financial institution involved in the purchase of Iranian drones, parts, or related systems. We have seen the damage that drones are doing in Israel and Ukraine, and expanding this legislation to go after Iran's drone production is an important step to support our allies abroad. I support this legislation and encourage my colleagues to vote yes. Thank you, and yield back.
Yields. The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I have no further speakers and prepare to close. The gentleman from North Carolina has no further speakers.
The gentleman reserves.
Reserve. I'm prepared to close.
The gentleman reserves. Recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself the balance of the time. I just want to close by saying that we must all continue to fight against Iran's growing influence and ensure we do everything in our power to protect the United States and its allies, including Israel, from Iran, especially after what we saw this weekend. It only reinforces what Iran is capable of, either directly or through its proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, the Houthis. There are so many areas where Iran continues to not just attack our key allies, including Israel, but also the United States of America. I hope my colleagues on both sides of the aisle will join us to support this common sense bipartisan legislation. Again, I want to thank my colleague, Mr. Lawler, for his leadership, and Chairman McHenry for his. And with that, I yield.
The gentleman yields. The gentleman from North Carolina is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I think this is an important bill that is timely, quite timely. We reported this bill out in November when we could have had more restrictive action against the Iranian regime than is currently in place by this administration, and a more aggressive stance against folks regimes that want to do harm globally. This is an important bill that is bipartisan out of the House Financial Services Committee. I want to commend Mr. Gottheimer and Mr. Lawler for their work here, as well as Mr. Foster's important addition to the bill. So it's a bipartisan product that is quite timely for us to put further restrictions on the Iranian regime. With that, I ask the support from my colleagues and ask for a yes vote and yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill, H.R. 5923, as amended? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended. Purposes, the gentleman from North Carolina seek recognition. The yeas and nays are requested. All those in favor of taking this vote by the yeas and nays will rise and remain standing until counted. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed. For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 5921, the No U.S. Financing for Iran Act of 2023, as amended.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar number 271, H.R. 5921. A bill to prohibit the Secretary of the Treasury from authorizing certain transactions by a United States financial institution in connection with Iran to prevent the International Monetary Fund from providing financial assistance to Iran, to codify prohibitions on export-import bank financing for the government of Iran, and for other purposes.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. McHenry, and the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Cleaver, each will control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from North Carolina.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days within which to revise and extend their remarks and exclude extraneous materials to this bill. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of this bill, the No U.S. Financing for Iran Act, sponsored by the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Huizenga. Mr. Huizenga is the subcommittee chair on the Oversight Subcommittee of the House Financial Services Committee, an important leader on the committee and an important voice in this Congress. And I'll yield him such time as he may consume to explain the bill.
The gentleman yields. The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Speaker, our friend and ally was just attacked by Iran, the world's leading state sponsor of terror. When the Committee on Financial Services held a hearing on my bill last November following the atrocities of October 7th, I remarked at that time that it was timely. Well, today is timely as well. We're at yet another inflection point. Iran's direct attack on Israel this weekend demonstrates that the U.S. must hold Iran accountable. One significant way to do this is by cutting off Iran's access to the funding it uses to finance terrorism. H.R. 5921 does exactly what it says. It stops Iran from being able to use the U.S. financial system while ensuring that institutions under our committee's jurisdiction keep their distance from the government in Tehran. As we all know, Iran remains one of the most heavily sanctioned countries in the world. However, many of those sanctions that are put in place are are imposed through executive orders. It is time that we codify them in law. 5921 does 3 main things. First, it prohibits Treasury from issuing licenses that allow U.S. financial institutions to enable trade with Iran. That is what's happening right now, Mr. Speaker. Treasury is issuing licenses for that business activity. It's clear that we must take all necessary steps to protect the integrity of the U.S. financial institutions by prohibiting these licenses that allow Tehran to trade oil and gas and other goods and facilitate, therefore, its support of terrorism. Second, this bill further cuts off financing for Iran from the world's lender of last resort, the International Monetary Fund, the IMF. While Iran is not currently seeking assistance from the fund, it certainly could as an IMF member country. My bill makes clear that the United States, as the IMF's largest shareholder, would oppose any such request. This prohibition would actually further extend to the IMF Special Drawing Rights Program, which, get this, Mr. Speaker, which in 2021, Iran utilized just 3 years ago to access approximately $5 billion. So we have seen the IMF already be used by the Ayatollahs in Iran to finance terrorism. And lastly, my bill extends to existing prohibition against the Export-Import Bank financing projects in Iran and that benefit Iran's leaders. Mr. Speaker, I want to note one exception that we have included in this bill before us today, and it's a very important one, and I know it's an important one to some of my colleagues, and I think my friend from Missouri is one of those folks. U.S. law has long exempted humanitarian assistance from sanctions so as to not punish innocent civilians, but to go after the leaders of the country. Well, my bill is targeted. It tightens our grip on the Ayatollahs and the Iranian leaders while permitting licenses to allow for humanitarian aid to continue to flow to the Iranian people. This is as clear as day in the text of the bill.
And Mr. Speaker, let's not forget that in January, an Iranian-backed proxy militia group conducted a lethal drone attack on a U.S. base in Jordan. The attack resulted in the deaths of 3 American service members and injured over 40 others. This was a direct attack on our troops. This occurred as the administration continues to ignore calls from our committee to provide transparency surrounding the most recent sanction waivers granted over the last year. By allowing sanction waivers to continue, the administration is maintaining a financial lifeline to the Iranian regime, even as it continues to support terrorism organizations around the world. And now Iran directly attacked our ally Israel. So, Mr. Speaker, when our fellow Americans deposit their earnings in a U.S. bank or entrust the government with their tax dollars, they do so assuming that the money will not be used in ways that undermine the security of our nation. We cannot say that today. That is, in fact, the case. These are common sense but long overdue prohibitions in my bill here today. And let's hold the Iranian regime accountable with this bipartisan bill. It will make sure that our U.S. financial system is safe. It will prohibit the World Bank and the IMF from being able to finance anything dealing with Iran. And I urge swift passage of the No U.S. Financing for Iran Act and yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields. The gentleman from North Carolina is
reserved.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Missouri is recognized.
I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman's recognized.
Let me preface my comments by saying, in harmony with Mr. Huizenga, that I too find what happened over the weekend with Iran sending over 300 missiles into Israel is obscene, just as what Hamas did on October 7th in Israel, which was brutal and inhumane. I do rise now in opposition to H.R. 5921, sponsored by Congressman Huizenga. This bill would cause, I believe, significant harm to our national security and harm America's small businesses trying to sell their products overseas. And what is clearly a very rushed attempt to give the impression that House Republicans know how to govern, they have brought this bill to the floor. 5 months after Democrats overwhelmingly rejected it, rather than actually taking action to respond to Iran's attack on Israel, instead, House Republicans would rather deny assistance to every developing country in the world and halt financing for small businesses at the Export-Import Bank. First, this bill would prevent the Treasury Secretary from agreeing to an increase in the International Monetary Fund's special drawing rights, which are essentially the currency of the IMF. The last increase, approved by Secretary Yellen in 2021, successfully was used by countries around the world to respond to the pandemic and bolstering their balance sheets. Sub-Saharan African countries were able to exchange their SDRs for U.S. dollars at no cost to U.S. taxpayers. Republican claims that Iran would be able to use its allocation of SDRs for terrorist financing, but the U.S. has effectively blocked Iran from doing that. Iran cannot convert SDRs to dollars because no country would want to be sanctioned for doing so. You don't have to believe what I'm saying. Iran's SDRs remain untouched decades after first receiving them. It has used not one single dollar in this century. Rather than offer legislation like Ranking Member Waters' bill that would target the ghost fleet that Iran uses to evade U.S. oil sanctions and which passed the committee by a wide bipartisan vote, House Republicans are using Iran's attack to target a source of funding for developing countries that they have long loathed. What's more, by undermining the ability of the IMF to increase its SDRs, we're only handing a victory to China, which longs to see IMF, the World Bank, and the other U.S.-led international institutions fail. The second significant concern is that H.R. 5921 would halt all EXIM financing, including for small businesses in the U.S. because it would require EXIM to go back and reevaluate every single transaction to look for terrorist financing. EXIM already has done this, but the Republicans want to make it look as if they are doing something by making EXIM do it again. But at great cost to our economy, and I don't need to remind this House that the last time Republicans were in charge, they shuttered the EXIM Bank for 5 months. And it was only after Democrats successfully used a discharge petition that it was reopened. Later in 2019, Democrats passed the longest reauthorization of the EXIM Import Bank. Nevertheless, Republicans are using this crisis to once again undermine an agency that they want to cut. Mr. Speaker, H.R. 5921 will do nothing to deter or punish Iran for its first direct assault on Israel, but instead will harm our national standing at the IMF, the livelihood of countless small businesses that rely on EXIM financing to sell their products overseas, and our national security. I urge all members to reject this bill. I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from North Carolina is recognized.
I'm prepared to close. I have no further speakers, so I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Missouri is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself the balance of my time.
Gentleman's recognized.
By offering H.R. 5921 today and in this fashion, House Republicans are trying to hide the fact that they are not capable of governing this chamber. Rather than offer legislation that would respond to Iran's attack on Israel, or the ongoing humanitarian disaster in Gaza, or the devastating war waged by Russia's Putin on the people of Ukraine, House Republicans are instead trying to undermine the International Monetary Fund and the Export-Import Bank. This bank will only harm U.S. businesses, our friends and allies around the world, and our international standing. But I'm afraid that seems to be the point. I'd also note that Republicans are bringing this bill up under a process that is reserved for bills that are actually bipartisan. Most Democrats in the committee rejected this bill, and I expect the same will happen today. Colleagues, please vote no on H.R. 5921. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields. The gentleman from North Carolina is recognized.
I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman's recognized.
Let me first start by expressing to the Speaker that this was a bipartisan bill reported out of committee. All the Republicans on the committee voted for it, and 7 Democrats voted for this bill coming out of committee. It's a bipartisan bill. Now, the standards of bipartisanship, I don't know what the judgment is now for a Democrat who voted against the bill in committee to say that his fellow Democrats aren't Democrats for voting for this bill. Now, I don't think that's what the gentleman was indicating, but the standard of bipartisanship, we've met it here. We've got 7 Democrats who voted for this bill out of committee. When we reported it out of committee in a different time, we reported this out of committee before Thanksgiving, November 14th. In light of what just happened over the weekend, we think that some of our committee members, and likewise some Democrats on the floor, might see this bill a little differently than maybe they voted in November. After this massive attack by the Iranian regime against Israel, we thought maybe they're going to look differently at this. And it's a sad thing that a bipartisan bill like this doesn't get the support from Democrat leadership or some on the other side of the aisle. What this bill does is narrow down what Iran can get from international support. We still allow for important humanitarian exemptions for us to provide the people of Iran, not the regime, the people of Iran, humanitarian assistance. What Mr. Huizinga's bill does is require the Treasury Secretary to oppose, with their voting power at the IMF and their statements and their words, saying to the IMF, do not support the Iranian regime and don't allow any unconditional opportunity for Iran to access the IMF. That's simply what we're doing here. Now, that doesn't end the Iranian regime's ability to get international dollars and international funds to support their war-making capacity or their terrorism activity. But it's an important statement that we should make as a Congress in light of what happened over the weekend, that times are different. So I want to commend Mr. Huizenga for the important work that the gentleman from Michigan has done to craft this bill. It was a good bill in November that achieved bipartisan support out of committee. It's even a better bill now that my colleagues can see the malevolence of this Iranian regime and their commitment to war-making and terror. And with that, I urge the adoption of this bill, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 5921 as amended? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative.
Request.
For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina seek recognition? The yeas and nays are requested. All those in favor of taking this vote by the yeas and nays will rise and remain standing until counted. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed. For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and pass the bill, H.R. 6245, the Holding Iranian Leaders Accountable Act, as amended.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar Number 273, H.R. 6245, a bill to require the Secretary of the Treasury to report on financial institutions' involvement with officials of the Iranian government and for other purposes.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. McHenry, and the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Cleaver, each will control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. McHenry.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days within which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on this bill.
Without objection.
And I yield myself such time as I may.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of H.R. 6245, the Holding Iranian Leaders Accountable Act, sponsored by the gentleman from Arkansas, Mr. Hill. Mr. Hill is the subcommittee chair, as well as vice chair on the House Financial Services. He holds posts on the Foreign Affairs Committee, as well as the Intelligence Committee, well positioned to make policy here and construct bipartisan legislation as he has done. And with that, I yield him such time as he may consume.
The gentleman yields. The gentleman is recognized.
I thank the Speaker, and I thank, of course, the chairman of our committee, Mr. McHenry from North Carolina, for affording the time. Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of H.R. 6245, the Holding Iranian Leaders Accountable Act. This legislation would make public detailed information about the assets held by senior Iranian government officials and require the U.S. Treasury to brief Congress about how the money was acquired and used and the total amounts. The Secretary would also identify and seek closure of U.S. and foreign bank accounts connected with these assets. By combining publicly available information with U.S. intelligence, this legislation can provide a valuable window into the corrupt business practices of Iran's top kleptocrats and limit their financial holdings, which can be used to support and sponsor terrorism. Chief among them is Ayatollah Khamenei, who, according to Reuters, controls a massive financial empire of real estate, corporate stakes, and other assets that total nearly $100 billion. That's right, Mr. Speaker. The Ayatollah in Iran, a cleric, a man of the faith of his religion in Iran, is worth $100 billion. While roughly 60% of the Iranian people live in poverty, Mr. Speaker. So it's important to show ordinary Iranians and the rest of the world about the theft and corruption of Iran's leaders. The Iranian regime has been funding terrorism against the United States for far too long. We have court cases in New York, Mr. Speaker, of assassination attempts in this country by Iranian actors. Hamas, so long in the news here because of what's happened in Gaza. Hamas, for example, is a creature of Iranian money and training. and the recent barbaric terrorist attack against Israel demonstrate the need to expose this financial tie. In Syria, Iran is the primary financier of Hamas and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard units fighting alongside Russia to prop up Assad's murderous regime. Iran-backed militias in Iraq have claimed responsibility for recent drone attacks against U.S. forces in northeast Syria and along the Jordanian border. And in Yemen, Iran is the primary financer of the Houthis, who've routinely launched long-range missiles at Israel over Saudi Arabian airspace and actively attacked international shipping and U.S. military, naval, and air forces in the region. These proxies, Mr. Speaker, seek to destabilize the Middle East by creating chaos and hiding behind hostages and civilians. Here at home, we need strong, bipartisan leadership in this House to protect our nation, defend our allies, and assist the innocent. I'm proud to say this bill passed the House Financial Services Committee 49-0 in November, unanimously. And a similar version of this bill passed with bipartisan support in a prior Congress. I thank my good friend from California, Congressman Juan Vargas, for his bipartisan support to expose the theocratic blood money and crack down on the banks that maintain accounts with connection to those funds. I thank Chairman McHenry for affording this bill to come to the House floor. I urge my colleagues to vote yes on H.R. 6245, and I yield back my time to the chairman.
Gentleman from North Carolina?
I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Missouri.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
I rise to support H.R. 6245, sponsored by Representative Hill and Representative Vargas. The bill would require the President to report on the assets of certain Iranian government officials and terrorist leaders and requires the publication of those assets in a report. We've heard from Treasury that to the extent that the Office of Foreign Asset Control, OFAC, which administers U.S. sanctions, has such information, it has already acted on it by imposing sanctions on these leaders and officials. Nevertheless, I and my Democratic colleagues on the Financial Services Committee are comfortable combining these names and assets into one place. And if OFAC hasn't already sanctioned any of the persons on this list, additional sanctions should follow. Democrats also pressed our Republican colleagues to also include the names and assets of Russian and Belarusian elites, especially due to the growing collaboration of Iran and Russia. Unfortunately, they were not supportive of that effort. While that is a missed opportunity, I hope Republicans will finally allow funding for Ukraine's war effort to come to the floor so that Ukrainians can defeat Putin. I urge my colleagues to support this bill, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman in reserves. The gentleman from North Carolina is recognized.
I'm prepared to close.
Gentleman is prepared to close. Gentleman from Missouri.
I have no further speakers, and I'm prepared to close if the gentleman from North Carolina has no further speakers.
The gentleman from Missouri is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself the balance of the time. H.R. 6245 would direct the President to create a public report of Iranian leaders and their assets, helping Congress ensure that the U.S. government is appropriately sanctioning those officials. Although this bill would not do anything to protect Israel from another attack, nor will it support our allies like Ukraine and Taiwan, who are either being attacked or threatened by an authoritarian regime, it may help identify targets for additional sanctions. I urge my colleagues to support this bill, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from North Carolina is recognized.
I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
I want to commend the bipartisan vote out of the House Financial Services Committee. I want to commend the author of this bill, Mr. Hill, for his work in building consensus here and the important work that we do as a nation state with our economic capacity to support friends and allies, to support the rule of law, free speech rights, human dignity, economic freedom globally, through our relationships, and standing against regimes that do not respect those rights, and especially most firmly opposing corrupt regimes and corrupt regimes that commit terrorist acts. And I think this is an important vote, especially in light of the events of the weekend in the Middle East and the attack by the Iranian regime against the people of Israel. So I urge the adoption, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill, H.R. 6245, as amended? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended. For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina seek recognition?
And ask the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. All those in favor of taking this vote by the yeas and nays will rise and remain standing until counted. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed. For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and pass the bill, H.R. 6015, the Iran Sanctions Accountability Act of 2023, as amended.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 6015, a bill to require the President to prevent the abuse of financial sanctions exemptions by Iran and for other purposes.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. McHenry, and the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Cleaver, will each control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from North Carolina.
I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and exclude extraneous material on the bill.
Without objection.
I also ask unanimous consent that the exchange of letters between the committees of jurisdiction be included in the record.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume. I rise in support of H.R. 6015, the Iran Sanctions Accountability Act, sponsored by the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Lukemeyer. Mr. Lukemeyer is the chair of the National Security Subcommittee on the Financial Services Committee, but could not be here today to articulate his support and the bill that he's constructed. The United States sanctions regime for Iran is designed to deprive Tehran of the resources it needs to pursue international terrorism, weapons of mass destruction, and other objects that undermine our national security and global stability. As with other sanctions regimes, our measures against Iran include common sense exemptions for humanitarian aid and humanitarian trade. To be clear, it is the country's dictatorship that we seek to punish, not the ordinary Iranian folks forced to suffer under the Ayatollahs. At the same time, we must ensure that humanitarian trade involving Iran isn't misused for illicit purposes. There's bipartisan support here for that. For example, last September, the Biden administration issued a waiver authorizing the transfer of $6 billion in frozen Iranian funds. While the President offered assurances that proceeds could only be used for humanitarian purchases, members on both sides of the aisle have questioned whether this would actually be the case. These concerns are understandable, and Mr. Lukemeyer's legislation addresses that concern head-on. Under this bill, the President will be required to issue regulations ensuring that humanitarian funds are not diverted to support terrorism or weapons proliferations. This may include an array of conditions, including specific transaction limits, enhanced due diligence procedures, and transparency requirements for Iranian counterparties. Additionally, this bill would require these regulations to be evaluated. The President will have to report to Congress on their effectiveness in preventing funds from facilitating Iran's illicit activities. I applaud Mr. Lukemeyer's thoughtful approach to this legislation, which is based on the idea that well-designed sanctions rely on well-designed exemptions. This bill received unanimous support of the Financial Services Committee. I look forward to its passage today, and I urge my colleagues to support H.R. 6015, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Cleaver.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to support H.R. 6015, the Iran Sanctions Accountability Act of 2023, sponsored by Representative Luetkemeyer, from the great state of Missouri, of which Kansas City is a part, and it also houses Chiefs Kingdom. Mr. Speaker, this bill would require the President to issue regulations that ensure the humanitarian waivers to economic and trade sanctions on Iran do not facilitate sanctions evasion, acts of international terrorism, or the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. Currently, in order for non-governmental organizations, NGOs, and others who avail themselves of the license and waiver process available under comprehensive sanctions regime, they must undertake extensive efforts to prevent the diversion of goods, services, and funds to the targets of sanctions. Humanitarian groups have shared details with the Financial Services Committee about their stringent process for preventing sanction evasions and terror financing. These standards are imposed internationally internally by the NGOs themselves. For example, through their anti-corruption policies and also externally, as seen in the U.S. government contracting requirements or the anti-money laundering and sanctions compliance measures imposed by their correspondent banking partners. This bill goes a step further by requiring the Office of Foreign Assets Control, OFAC, to develop a set of formal rules by which humanitarian exceptions to sanctions will not facilitate, directly or indirectly, support sanctions evasion, acts of international terrorism, or the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. This bill also requires Treasury to instruct the U.S. Director at the World Bank to formally oppose the provision of financial assistance to the government of Iran. I would note that the U.S. already opposes any financial assistance to the government of Iran. Notably, Republicans are moving this bill at the same time that they are trying to jam through the House a much more toxic version of this bill tomorrow, which is H.R. 6323, which would undermine the President's ability to provide waivers to sanctions for humanitarian assistance. While Mr. Luetkemeier's bill largely is redundant of existing U.S. policy, Ms. Kim's bill tomorrow will harm our national interests and America's standing in the world. I urge colleagues to support this bill, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from North Carolina is recognized.
I reserve, and I'm prepared to close.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman for Missouri is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself the balance of the time. H.R. 6015 would require the President to ensure that humanitarian exemptions involving U.S. sanctions on Iran do not facilitate acts of international terrorism transactions with sanctioned persons or the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. This bill mandates that the President establish clear rules for how such sanctions waivers, and licenses can be applied. Unlike many of the other bills offered by my Republican colleagues, this one seems to is largely redundant of existing U.S. policy and affirms the long-standing practice of the United States to offer humanitarian waivers to our comprehensive sanctions to ensure that innocent civilians are not the targets of our sanctions. I again urge my colleagues to support this bill, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Missouri yields back. The gentleman from North Carolina is recognized.
I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
I applaud Mr. Luetkemeier's thoughtful approach here, and I think it's important to note this bill was passed but with unanimous support out of the House Financial Services Committee, and I would expect similar unanimous support here on the House floor to make a strong statement that we want our sanctions to work. And when we say we're going to do something as a country, we follow through on that commitment. I think this is a proper way to do that in light of the actions of the Iranian regime over the weekend. In particular, we want to make sure that all sanctions against the Iranian regime are appropriate and appropriately designed and carried out well. And so with that, yield back the balance of my time and ask my colleagues to vote yes on this bill.
The gentleman yields back. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 6015 as amended? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended.
And I ask for the yeas and nays.
For what purposes, gentlemen recognized?
Ask for the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays have so ordered, have been requested. All those in favor of taking this vote by the yeas and nays rise and remain standing until counted. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed. Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the Chair declares the House in recess until approximately 6:30 p.m. today.
The House will be in order. Proceedings will resume on questions previously postponed. Votes will be taken in the following order. Motion to table the motion to reconsider H.R. 7888. Motions to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 6408, H.R. 5923, and H.R. 5921. The first electronic vote will be conducted as a 15-minute vote. Pursuant to Clause 9 of Rule 20, remaining electronic votes will be conducted as 5-minute votes. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business is the question on the motion to table, the motion to reconsider, the vote on the passage of the bill, H.R. 7888. The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 7888, a bill to reform the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act of 1978.
The question is on the motion to table offered by the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Turner, on which the yeas and nays were ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 15-minute vote.
On this vote, the ayes are 259 and the nays are 128. The motion. Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business is the vote on the motion of the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Smith, to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 6408 as amended, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title.
Union Calendar number 270, H.R. 6408. A bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to terminate the tax-exempt status of terrorist supporting organizations.
We're good. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill as amended? Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote. On this vote, the yeas are 382, the nays are 11. Two-thirds being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business is the vote on the motion of the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. McHenry, to suspend the rules, pass H.R. 5923 as amended, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title.
H.R. 5923, a bill to impose restrictions on correspondent and payable through accounts in the United States with respect to Chinese financial institutions that conduct transactions involving the purchase of petroleum or petroleum products from Iran.
Good. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill as amended? Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote. On this vote, the yeas are 383, the nays are 11, two-thirds being in the affirmative. The rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business is the vote on the motion of the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. McHenry, to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 5921 as amended, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title.
Union Calendar Number 271, H.R. 5921, a bill to prohibit the Secretary of the Treasury from authorizing certain transactions by a United States financial institution in connection with Iran, to prevent the International Monetary Fund from providing financial assistance to Iran, to codify prohibitions on export-import bank financing for the government of Iran, and for other purposes.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill as amended? Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote. On this On this vote, the yeas are 294, the nays are 105, two-thirds being in the affirmative. The rules are suspended. The bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the desk. Desk.
If members will take their conversations off the floor. The chair will now entertain requests for 1-minute speeches. For what purpose does the gentleman from Montana seek recognition?
Speaker, I seek unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, today I rise to recognize and congratulate Colonel Steve Lavin on his recent retirement from law enforcement with the Montana Highway Patrol after 32 years. Born in Helena, Steve grew up dedicated to serving the people of Montana. After graduating from Capitol High School in 1985, Steve decided to attend Montana State University, where he later graduated and attended the Montana Law Enforcement Academy. Prior to his appointment to the colonel position, Steve served as a major for the Montana Highway Patrol for 28 years. Steve was dedicated to serving Montanans in any capacity, which led him to serve 4 terms in the Montana House of Representatives in Montana's 8th District from 2011 to 2018, and I was privileged to serve beside him. In January 2021, Montana Attorney General Austin Knudsen appointed Steve as Colonel of the Montana Highway Patrol, where he served the remainder of his career. I will forever be grateful for Colonel Steve Lavin's service to his unwavering dedication to the Treasure State. I wish Colonel Lavin a peaceful retirement, fishing in Kalispell. He has certainly earned it. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
The gentleman yields. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from California seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to use the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
The gentlewoman is recognized. Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize the 35th anniversary of the City of Diamond Bar. Founded in 1989, Diamond Bar is celebrating 35 years of cityhood this April. Like many Southern California communities, Diamond Bar's recorded history started with the Mexican land grant for ranching, this one covering Brea Canyon and the eastern Walnut Valley. The Diamond Bar Ranch area eventually developed into a planned residential community, more than 50,000 of my constituents now call Diamond Bar home. This San Gabriel Valley city, set against the mountain backdrop, offers so much to its residents and visitors. From beautiful parks like Summit Ridge, a wonderful public library, top-rated school districts, and public safety services, Diamond Bar is a wonderful place for families to live and to work. I'm very proud to represent Diamond Bar as part of California's 38th Congressional District. I wish a happy birthday to the city of Diamond Bar.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Georgia seek recognition?
Ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize the outstanding achievements of Liberty County High School senior Madison Crawwell. Madison has claimed the #1 spot in the country for college acceptances and scholarship awards. With over $11 million in scholarship awards, Madison has inspired peers across the country, her local community, and all of Georgia's 1st Congressional District. Madison's father, Sergeant First Class Delano Langley, is on active duty with the Army and is incredibly proud of his daughter's hard work and all that she has overcome to get here. Coming from a family of service, Madison wants to use her platform to help other students reach their dreams. Dedicated to giving back, Madison and her parents are already taking steps to host workshops on college and scholarship applications. Beyond her outstanding academic achievements, Madison is also heavily involved in her community. Madison has made the 1st District proud, and I look forward to seeing what the future holds for this accomplished young scholar. Congratulations, Madison. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition?
Speaker, I request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute. Revise or extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor Fireman First Class Walter Schleider. A son of Western PA, he was born in 1916 in Freedom, PA, in what's now the 17th Congressional District, at the close of the First World War. At the start of the Second World War, Walter Schleider lost his life in the struggle for the value for which his hometown is named. He was only 22. Fireman Schleider enlisted in the Navy in 1940 and was sent to Pearl Harbor. He was promoted to Fireman First Class just days before the Japanese attack on December 7th. A crewman aboard the USS Oklahoma, he was one of 429 sailors who perished on that dark day. Since his body could not be immediately identified, his remains were placed in a Hawaiian cemetery with other unidentified service members. His Gold Star mother grieved the loss of her only son without the closure of putting his body to rest. In 2015, the Navy launched the USS Oklahoma Project to identify the remaining sailors and bring them home. In 2018, Fireman Schleider was identified through DNA technology. And finally, last week, he was laid to rest at the National Cemetery of the Alleghenies. Today, we honor his service and sacrifice. I yield back, Mr. Speaker.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Tennessee seek recognition?
To revise and extend my remarks, Mr. Speaker, seek unanimous consent.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to honor the Mark and Kim Show, as is celebrating its 24th year on Star 102.1. For 24 years, listeners have been able to tune in and listen to Mark Anthony and Kim Hansard every weekday from 5 to 10 a.m. I've always enjoyed going on their show, although they don't play country music, so I don't listen to them that much, I must say. They're just a couple of folks who want to help East Tennessee and start their day off right. And my family is no exception. When my wife Kelly would take Isabel to school, Mark and Kim Show would always be their go-to radio station. We've always enjoyed listening to them. They tell jokes, share stories, and also do lots of good for the Knoxville community. They have used their platforms to help good causes by hosting radiothons to raise money for places like East Tennessee Children's Hospital. My friend Kim Hansard, she's also a breast cancer survivor, and she's a real gutsy lady, Mr. Speaker, and she's done a lot of great work with the American Cancer Society in our area. But on a personal level, I got to see their kindness firsthand when my daughter Isabel got hurt in a bad accident with her horse a couple of years ago. And Kim brought a wonderful casserole by the house, and she was just wonderful. She was a huge help while Isabel was recovering, and Kelly and I were staying with her at the hospital. Mark and Kim have spent 24 years sharing their lives with the Knoxville community, making it the longest-running morning show in Knoxville history. Here's to many more years, Mark and Kim, and please try to play some country music. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back the remainder of my time.
For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is an incredibly important week for democracy around the globe. Ronald Reagan famously went to the Brandenburg Gate and said, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." But now, instead of tearing down walls, some extremist voices in Congress are calling for the construction of new barriers, isolating America from its allies and emboldening our adversaries. Moscow Marjorie and the Freedom Caucus are echoing Kremlin messaging, from boats to corruption to Biden's non-existent bribes. We know it's nothing but Russian propaganda. The chair of the House Intelligence Committee said that anti-Ukraine messages from Russia are being, quote unquote, uttered on the House floor. Listen, folks, we can either stand with democracies like Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan, or we can watch them fall. Speaker Johnson, it's past time to put the supplemental aid package on the floor for an up or down vote. Thank you, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise before you today to recognize Kimberly Saltzman for her outstanding work in the district. Ms. Saltzman, who is the Executive Director of the Mount Etna Health Center's Children's Advocacy Center of Center County, was honored as a Pennsylvania Blue Ribbon Champion for Safe Kids by the Pennsylvania Family Support Alliance in Harrisburg at the beginning of April. This award is given to those who dedicate themselves to protecting children across the Commonwealth. The award is distributed annually during the Child Abuse Prevention Month in April. Ms. Saltzman has worked with the Children's Advocacy Center since 2014, when it was founded. During her time there, she has conducted more than 260 child forensic interviews. Prior to working at the center, she worked for the Behavioral Health Division at Sinclair. The Children's Advocacy Center provides diligent work for the children of Pennsylvania, having completed more than 1,900 medical exams and conducted 2,300 forensic interviews in the last 10 years. During Child Abuse Prevention Month, we must recognize those who are essential to safeguarding our youth. Ms. Saltzman was one of 4 recipients of the award this year. Congratulations on this award, and thank you for all you do to protect the children in our community. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back the balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from North Carolina seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, last Saturday, Iran launched an unprecedented attack on our key democratic ally, Israel. The government of Iran is the leading state sponsor of terrorism worldwide. It consistently uses proxies to attack the Jewish state and supplies weapons to aid Putin's invasion of Ukraine. Iran's direct attack on Israel underscores the serious threat to the global order and to democracy that the world is facing. Israel is under attack. Ukraine is running out of ammunition as we speak. It's far past time for Congress to act. The Speaker must immediately bring the Senate supplemental aid package to the floor. That aid package passed the Senate with 70 votes from both Democrats and Republicans. Bring it to the floor now so we can pass it, send it to the President's desk, and deliver this long overdue, crucially needed aid to our allies as soon as possible. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from North Carolina seek recognition?
I ask approval to speak to the House for 1 minute, Mr. Speaker.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to recognize the Bombers softball team in Rural Hall, North Carolina. Now, the Bombers softball team is not average by any stretch of the imagination. This team has a unique and inspiring story. The team is comprised of athletes who are in their 80s and 90s and who have an abiding gratitude for spirited camaraderie and a commitment to living life to the fullest. Most nights during the summer, these athletes play at Covington Memorial Park in Rural Hall and enjoy a few hours of sport among friends. Mr. Speaker, their passion is admirable, and it is a testament to the fact that age really is just a number. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask for unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to advise that.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, with the portrait of Lady Justice hanging above, Judge Alicia Slaughter donned her robe with her husband Jason at her side. She made history by becoming the first black female to assume a judgeship in North Carolina's 8th Judicial District. The presider was the Honorable Quentin Sumner, who had become the first black judge in the same district 41 years prior. The courtroom was packed with standing room only. Her family, friends, residents, and the ladies of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. And many distinguished jurists were in attendance. There was so much energy in the room because Eastern North Carolina is proud that Judge Slaughter would take her rightful seat on the bench. Judge Slaughter is not only an inspiration to her daughters, Brielle and Haley, but all young people across Eastern North Carolina. She's a prize and represents our future. Her grandmother, who taught her how to pray, reminds us that God still answers prayers. Congratulations, Your Honor. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Georgia seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman from Georgia is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to congratulate Scotty Scheffler for his victory at the 2024 Masters Tournament. The first full week of April every year, golf fans across the world get a glimpse into the beauty and majesty that Georgia's 12th District has to offer. For 9 decades, the world's finest golfers have descended upon Augusta, Georgia, to put their game to the ultimate test on the grounds of the Augusta National Golf Club. Furthermore, congratulations to Chairman Ridley, members of the Augusta National, along with this year's staff and volunteers for hosting yet another historic and memorable Masters Week. But the best part about the world's most dominant golfer is Scotty Scheffler's character, repeatedly speaking about how faith and family defines him in the upcoming birth of his child. He shared with the world that a friend on Sunday morning had reminded him that his victory was secured on the cross. And when he stepped out on that first tee, he was confident that he had done all that he could do to prepare for that final round. He knew that victory would be for God's glory. What a powerful testimony. Scotty, you are a true champion and an exemplary role model for golf around the world. Congratulations to the 2024 Masters champion, Scotty Scheffler, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Ohio seek recognition?
And extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, America, pay attention. Here's a recent photo taken in Iran of dictator Ayatollah Khomeini's defense chieftain, Mahmoud Bagheri, with Russian dictator Putin's top Russian general, Shoigu. It's clear what these warlords were up to, meeting to collude on weapons of war. Yes, these two dictators are conspiring and warring against liberty for Ukraine, Israel, and adjoining nations in the Middle East. Make no mistake, these overlords want to extend their spiderweb of tyranny across Ukraine, the Middle East, and beyond. And Ukraine is fighting valiantly to push Russia out of its country to join the West in the European Confederation of Free Nations. Meanwhile, Houthi terrorists, supported by Iran, are blocking passage of trade through the Red Sea and Straits of Hormuz, impacting global supply chains and raising prices. And 140,000 of Iran's Hezbollah mercenaries are ensconced in southern Lebanon, raining down rockets into Israel. Hamas terrorists in Gaza find allies in these terrorist regimes. Speaker Johnson, support liberty, blunt terrorism and tyranny. Move to the floor the National Security Supplemental Aid Bill. Support freedom, not terrorism and tyranny. And I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from South Carolina seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Biden failure of appeasement emboldened Tehran to directly launch hundreds of drones and missiles at Israel on Saturday. The same drones the Iranian regime produces with war criminal Putin to murder innocent Ukrainians. Dictators mean death to Israel, murder in Ukraine, death to America. Following the attack, Iran yesterday brazenly threatened Americans, stating, quote, U.S. must stay away. Iranian regime puppets have attacked U.S. troops in the region 150 times since the barbaric October 7th attack on Israel, including the January 28th attack that murdered 3 courageous young American service members. Dictators respond to peace through strength, as promoted by Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu with the Abraham Accords. In conclusion, God bless our troops who successfully protected America for 20 years as the global war on terrorism moves from the Afghanistan safe haven to America. We do not need new border laws. We need to enforce existing laws. Biden shamefully opens the borders for dictators as more 9/11 attacks across America are imminent, as repeatedly warned by the FBI. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, in 1980, Bob Martinez Jr. stepped foot at Local 776 in Fort Worth to help keep our nation free and safe by building some of the best aerospace machinery that the world has ever seen. And during his 8 years as international president of IEM, he brought that same dedication, that same effort, all of that achievement that he brought that from 1980 until he became president of the IEM. He brought all of that with him to the job that he took. As a U.S. Naval Air veteran, his journey in the labor movement, again, began in 1980. And Bob went on to become the first and the 14th president of IEM, but the first Latino to lead this major union. Under his leadership, IEM has absolutely thrived and helped make this organization a powerhouse that it is today. And he used his position to advocate for men and women all over the United States, not just Fort Worth, during his career. I want to extend Bob a big congratulations on his career and his unwavering dedication to working families all over North America and trades unions. Bob, good luck. Welcome back to Fort Worth. Welcome back to North Richland Hills. We are happy to have you home, and congratulations on all of your achievements.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well, Mr. Speaker, a lot of false rhetoric flying around this country and around the world, the UN, the whole works, including today even a shutdown of the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco by pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian protesters. They're sure not making themselves a lot of friends to their cause, are they? So what does it really boil down to? Since the Gaza Strip was created not that many years ago in order to give an area for the Palestinians to have, the ink wasn't even dry on the agreement before they started setting up rockets and mortars and launching them upon the people of Israel, who only seek peace. Israel only seeks peace. Yet what do they get? Deal after deal is offered, negotiation after negotiation. Truly, what it boils down to, was a great quote I saw here very recently, was that a fellow named John Spencer at West Point said, "The sole reason for civilian deaths in Gaza is Hamas. For Israel's part, it's taken more care to prevent them than any other army in human history." Let that settle in for a minute. They've taken more care than anybody
has expired.
to prevent civilian deaths. Hamas is the one causing them. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition?
Ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to honor Black Maternal Health Week and all of the members of my community who risked their lives to be black and pregnant in America. I want to shout out a member of our New York 16 community, Nubia Martin, a birth worker and founder of Birth from the Earth, a nonprofit focused on education and empowerment that provides health and wellness services for the black community. I also want to highlight the work of Cheryl Brennan and Sister to Sister International, housed in Yonkers, New York. They connect women and girls of African descent to education and resources worldwide. These organizations are on the front lines of the black maternal health crisis and are fighting to make sure every person in our district and across the country has access to quality reproductive care. It's time we start making the necessary improvements to our healthcare system, workforce training, and wraparound services to protect and uplift black pregnant people and parents. We need to make our healthcare system an anti-racist system. Thank you, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields. Under the Speaker's announced policies of January 9, 2023, the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Thompson, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Majority Leader.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on the topic of this special order.
Without objection, if you will, have the microphone there. Thank you.
Well, thank you again, Mr. Speaker. Turmoil in the Middle East heightened over the weekend, and my prayers are with all involved. I trust our nation's leadership can rise to the task at hand. However, in another matter of food and national security, this evening I'm taking the opportunity to discuss how farmers, ranchers, foresters, and consumers deserve certainty. Agriculture remains the backbone of America. But our nation's dedicated producers have been burdened with fractured supply chains, considerable input costs, relentless inflation, natural disasters, volatile markets, and labor shortages. Each is consistently worsened by ill-conceived, half-baked executive action by unelected bureaucrats in Washington. Our nation's farmers are bearing the brunt of it. And adding insult to injury, we're now a net importer facing the most significant decline in farm income in our history. Farmers impact our everyday lives, so how do we support those who provide so much to our families, to our nation, and to our world? The answer is a 5-year farm bill. The Committee on Agriculture has spent the last 3 years listening to the concerns of America's producers and turning their words into legislation. We've received input, ideas, and suggestions from stakeholders and members alike through our public portals and listening sessions across the country. Through this transparent and exhaustive process, we have produced a bipartisan product that will provide effective tools to our producers by bolstering the safety net, strengthening nutrition programs and access opportunities, and revitalize rural America. Since our last Farm Bill was passed in 2018, our producers have faced countless challenges. The needs of farm country are self-evident. We have developed a bill to meet them and a responsibility to fund them. For nearly a year, I've tried to educate my colleagues, and the hand-holding has yielded nothing. With that, my colleagues and I are here tonight to showcase our work and show that the House Republicans have done their job. Mr. Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Miller. And I appreciate his service on the House Agriculture Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's an honor to serve alongside you. And thank you for yielding the time for this evening's special order. I'd like to emphasize the importance of passing an updated farm bill that supports our agricultural industry by strengthening the farm safety net, bolsters rural economies, and meets the growing food security and affordability difficulties that are impacting American families. Mr. Speaker, agriculture and food-related industries are responsible for almost $1.4 trillion of the United States gross domestic product. Yet, American farmers, specifically farmers in my district, face daunting challenges in providing a stable and affordable food supply to our nation. In Ohio, I've heard farmers and ranchers' concerns about continued inflationary pressures, regulatory hurdles, limited trade markets, animal health, and a broad range of other issues. Through the House Agricultural Committee's busy schedule over the past 16 months, I've seen the importance of policies that keep the farm safety net strong, incentivize conservation, encourage innovative research initiatives, support specialty crops, allow farmers to grow our energy resources, and much more. Mr. Speaker, the United States Department of Agriculture recently reported that our nation has lost over 140,000 farms in the last 5 years. This is unsustainable. The USDA's most recent farm income forecast reflects the urgent need to act. The report anticipates a 25% decrease in farm income from 2023 to 2024, one of the largest year-to-year dollar reductions in net farm income on record. Failure to pass an updated farm bill could exacerbate these already growing problems and have a devastating impact on our economy and food supply chains. The United States food and agricultural sector has an economic output of over $8.6 trillion and cannot afford to wait. I hope that my colleagues will recognize the magnitude of these issues and help us to pass a sound farm bill quickly. I thank the chairman, and I thank you, and I yield.
I thank the gentleman and for his leadership and dedication to America's, and I know Ohio's, #1 industry. Now pleased to recognize the gentleman from the Kansas Big One, the chairman of the subcommittee on livestock, dairy, and poultry, Mr. Mann, for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for your leadership of our committee in this effort. I rise to call on this Congress to pass a comprehensive 5-year farm bill. This is my 25th time to come to the House floor to address the importance of a 5-year farm bill that is long enough to provide certainty and short enough to respond to the market changes and strengthen the safety net. America's farmers, ranchers, and agricultural producers deserve it. America's food and national security depend on it, and this Congress must deliver it. In the almost 5.5 years since the last farm bill was signed into law, the world has drastically changed. Since 2018, we've experienced a global pandemic, seen a war unfold between Russia and Ukraine, and now Israel and Hamas, and witnessed President Biden's failed trade agenda cause market fluctuations that no one could have imagined. Top of that, President Biden's spending spree and senseless war on American energy has driven inflation to historic levels. No matter how many times administration officials and political pundits say that input costs and inflation rates are coming down, our ag producers know that these levels are still sky high in comparison to the last farm bill in 2018. As Congress considers these conditions, we must also anticipate future market fluctuation as best we can. That is why my priorities for the farm bill are to strengthen and protect crop insurance, incentivize agriculture trade, and conduct rigorous oversight. Last year's drought and market conditions caused producers in Kansas to abandon the highest number of acres of wheat since World War I, and I witnessed a 35% decrease in annual wheat per harvested acre in my district. A good crop insurance program and strong safety net help ag producers in situations like these and help producers reliably stock our grocery store shelves, maintain a robust food supply, and keep people fed. It's one of our nation's best examples of a public-private partnership, and Congress must use a scalpel and not a sledgehammer when ensuring its continuous success for generations to come. Ag trade promotion helps Americans remain competitive and secure as well. Back in February, I introduced legislation that would allocate additional resources to trade promotion programs in this Farm Bill. Between 1977 and 2019, these trade programs added 13.7% of additional export revenue to the value of U.S. ag products and helped to create more than 500,000 American jobs. It is no secret that perhaps more than any other profession, ag producers face endless hurdles as they work tirelessly to raise our livestock, grow our food, and put fuel in our cars. This next Farm Bill must not handicap them with additional overly restrictive regulation. Instead, Congress must get out of their way and support them with the tools they need to protect the future of American food and agriculture. If you think about a safety net, the higher the risk, the higher the fall, and the stronger the safety net that you need to survive. The livelihoods of American producers and consumers are on the line right now, and that means our food security and national security are on the line as well. American farmers, ranchers, and agricultural producers need certainty like never before, and Congress must deliver for them with a 5-year Farm Bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for having this special order hour tonight.
Well, I thank the gentleman. Now, please recognize the gentleman from Iowa, Mr. Feenstra, for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Thompson. Mr. Speaker, the Farm Bill continues to be a vital investment to our producers, our competition with China, and our American economy. An important component of this Farm Bill is the crop insurance program. Before coming to Congress, I sold crop insurance in my hometown of Hull, Iowa. I confidently say that this program is a crucial piece to the safety net of the farming community. When severe weather strikes, like we had in Iowa with the derecho several years ago, the economy can take a turn very quickly. Crop insurance protects that farmer during the most unpredictable times. That's why we must pass a Farm Bill that includes this robust investment in federal crop insurance program. I was proud to introduce legislation that would help deliver a discount to help the next generation of Iowa farmers who utilize this important management tool. With nearly 40% of American farmland expected to change hands in the next 2 decades, this bill will make investments to the next generation and not allow our farmland to fall into the hands of our foreign adversaries. My bill and the Farm Bill at large will help keep families rooted in rural communities, continue Iowa's proud tradition of farm families, and keep China away from our farmland. I represent the second largest agricultural producing district in the country that has over 50,000 active farm crop insurance policies. I will continue to be a strong voice for agriculture and ensure that we pass a strong Farm Bill for Iowa and the nation that enhances crop insurance and assists the next generation. Thank you, Chairman Thompson, for your leadership. I look forward to working with my colleagues to get this Farm Bill passed this year to provide certainty for our farmers, producers, and rural communities. Thank you, and I yield back.
Well, I thank the gentleman for his leadership in agriculture. And now please recognize the gentleman from Minnesota 1, who serves as chairman of the Subcommittee on Nutrition, Foreign Agriculture, and Horticulture, Representative Brad Fenstead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a proud 4th-generation farmer raising the 5th generation, I know firsthand the importance of writing and passing a strong Farm Bill that is written by farmers for farmers. It's written by rural America for rural America. Without farmers' hard work and dedication, we would not have the safe, affordable, nutritious food that stocks our shelves every day. Food security is national security. And through strong farm policy, we will limit our dependence on foreign countries and maintain the most abundant and highest quality food supply in the world. In recent years, the ag industry has faced increased volatility as a result of COVID-19 pandemic, weather-related disasters, and international conflict. Today, the producers I represent in southern Minnesota are dealing with sky-high input costs and increased regulatory burdens, as well as a 27% decline in net farm income and a $30 billion ag trade deficit, creating a highly leveraged financial environment in farm country. The Farm Bill provides our farmers with the roadmap of what the next 5 years of farm policy will look like and it is critical that we act to protect our family farmers and ensure that they can pass their operations down to that next generation. Our farmers are part of one of the most honorable professions, and as only 2% of the American population, we must provide farm country with the support it needs. Chairman Thompson, as well as the House Agriculture Committee, has been working tirelessly to write a farm bill that meets their needs and the needs of all Americans. I am committed to standing shoulder to shoulder with my colleagues in Congress and the ag community to pass a farm bill that will shape the future of farm policy, including protecting and strengthening crop insurance, farmers' #1 risk management tool, revitalizing rural America, improving voluntary incentive-based conservation programs, and ensuring that taxpayers' dollars are used responsibly. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, I thank you for your leadership and the direction that you're providing the Ag Committee, and I look ready to go to work with you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'll yield back.
Well, I thank the gentleman. And now pleased to recognize from the state of Tennessee, the Tennessee 6th Congressional District, Representative John Rose.
Thank you, Chairman Thompson. And Mr. Speaker, in America, we can almost always count on the grocery store's shelves being full. Too often, many overlook just how blessed we are to live in a country with such an abundance of food. Today, as Americans, we enjoy the most abundant, affordable, and safe supply of food in the history of humankind. That's because of the farmers, ranchers, producers, and suppliers who put in the hours and take the risks to produce the food and fiber we count on. It's also in part because of the farm safety net programs included in the Farm Bill that ensure that we continue producing enough to feed American citizens. As an 8th-generation Tennessee farmer and former Tennessee Commissioner of Agriculture, I can attest that programs in the Farm Bill, like the federal crop insurance program, are critical to ensuring we maintain the abundant and affordable supply of food in the United States. These farm safety net programs provide risk protection and income support for farmers who experience natural disasters, adverse growing conditions, and fluctuations in market prices. We must remember, in these times of rampant inflation and ever-rising prices for farm inputs, that our farmers are price takers. They don't have the luxury of passing their rising input costs on in the form of higher prices. The crop insurance program specifically helps farmers pay their private insurance premiums, which are often too expensive for small family farmers. In 2021, premium assistance covered 62% of premiums, on average, for those who qualified. This assistance is available for most field crops, several specialty crops, and some livestock producers. However, in their current form, these programs are far from perfect and far from meeting the growing need of our nation's producers. Emergency assistance and routine support payments are often determined by arbitrary and outdated formulas. It's why this proposed farm bill makes these programs more adaptive to inflation. Rising input costs continue to burden our nation's farms, big and small, which is why the enhancements in this bill will improve the farm safety net for our farmers and agricultural producers. I am committed to improving these commodity programs by increasing reference prices and creating a more robust crop insurance program. Congress has the ability to update our farm policy by crafting a bipartisan farm bill that aligns the safety net with the needs of producers, expands market access, and strengthens program operations to demand transparency and accountability for the American taxpayer. In a divided Congress, this would be a major win for the American people and the Tennesseans I represent. Throughout the Farm Bill process, I have remained committed, as have my colleagues, to delivering for them, and I thank the chairman for his persistence and dedication to ensure our farmers are not left behind. Rest assured, Republicans in the House Agriculture Committee will not quit working on passing this bill until the job is done. You have our word, because it's the very least our farmers who work day in and day out deserve. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
Well, I thank the gentleman from Tennessee. And now I'm pleased to recognize a farmer from Washington State, from Washington, 4th Congressional District, also serves as the chair of our Western Caucus, which is a force to be reckoned with when it comes to rural issues and the shared dedication towards those rural issues with the Agriculture Committee. Representative Dan Newhouse, pleased to recognize for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Thompson. Thanks for those kind remarks on the Congressional Western Caucus, and thanks for being such a strong member of the Western Caucus. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to discuss the importance of a farm bill, the importance of a farm bill that addresses the needs, the priorities, and the concerns of rural America. As chairman of the Congressional Western Caucus, and probably even more importantly, as a third-generation farmer myself, my son being now the 4th generation, I know the difficulties farmers and ranchers face in day-to-day operations. Agriculture is the lifeblood of our nation. The government's role should be to support the agricultural industry and their efforts to feed and fuel our country. And the Farm Bill does just that. Today, farmers and ranchers understand all too well the consequences of a heavy-handed federal bureaucracy. Today, we are at a crossroads. We are being pushed to the limits. Agricultural operations, both large and small, have been impacted by excessive regulations and tax burdens that have proved challenging for everyday life. That's why at this critical moment, we cannot turn our backs on the men and women who've made American agriculture successful. Western Caucus members have been consistent about their priorities for a successful farm bill. These include supporting production agriculture in every way possible, improving voluntary conservation programs to ensure that those closest to the land can manage it the way that they know the best, enhancing forest health and management, and strengthening America's rural communities through investment and development. Throughout this entire process, I've been impressed with the Agriculture Committee's attention to produce the best farm bill possible. I've been especially encouraged by Chairman Thompson's due diligence to go out and gather community perspectives, evaluate current programs, and advocate for policies to be included in the legislation with rural America first and foremost in mind. He's been to my state several times. I think he's been to almost every single state in the Union. Under Chairman Thompson's leadership, the committee has strived to produce a comprehensive and effective farm bill that accomplishes many of the priorities that the Western Caucus members advocate for. This legislation will send a message to America's farmers and ranchers that we will still have their backs, and I will continue to support them just as they support our nation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
Well, I thank the gentleman from Washington State. Thanks for his hospitality, too, being able to tour your farming operation and a lot of others while I was there. Now, please recognize just a great champion advocate from Iowa for America's #1 industry, which is agriculture, and he represents Iowa's 3rd Congressional District. Representative Zach Nunn, please recognize him for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Chairman Thompson, as well as our colleagues on the Ag Committee. As a 6th-generation Iowan and part of a Century family farm, collectively we know the hands, hearts, and hard work of Iowa farmers feed and fuel the world. Now, every Iowan is impacted by this upcoming farm bill and the agricultural policy that's included, whether it's as part of the supply chain, in the grocery store checkout line, or at a dinner table, as I, with my 6 kids, know very well based on our grocery bills. Unfortunately, input costs are up, surging 35% in recent years, and inflation is driving those profits down. Now, we know this. Farmers are not price makers. They are price takers, and too often, as the chairman has highlighted, they end up bearing the brunt of those cost increases. It was reported earlier this year that Iowa pork producers alone are experiencing their worst loss in 25 years amid a difficult economy. Producers are facing enough difficulties without worrying about D.C. being the one that hurts their business. They deserve far better than to be saddled with the consequences of politicians here in D.C. who might not be doing their job. And so that is why it's important that we must pass a bipartisan farm bill as soon as possible. And I'm grateful for our chairman taking the reins on this. As farmers deserve to have the certainty they need to continue running their operations after a busy harvest season, it is critical that this farm bill include key provisions, including strengthening the farm safety net for the more than 85,000 family farms in my home state of Iowa and so many more around the country. We must support also the next generation of farmers, both access to capital as well as beginning their own farm operation. Increase rural economic development with access to credit for grants, loans, and improved infrastructure, including improvement for rural broadband. Bolstering innovation in security and agriculture by expanding cybersecurity resources, where ag is one of the top 3 sectors under attack today, and importantly, preventing places like China from purchasing farmland right here in America. Ultimately, we must help the farmers, the best stewards of our land, conserve their farmland as our national resource. And unleashing America's energy independence begins with a fight for biofuels in places like Iowa. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll continue to fight for Iowa's farmers and producers as we move forward. I look forward to working with you and this team. It's time for Congress to come together, pass a farm bill for the betterment of our farmers, producers, communities, and families like yours and mine. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield my time.
Well, Representative Nunn, thank you so much for your leadership. Now, please recognize a gentleman from Georgia 8. He is the subcommittee chair on the Agriculture Committee for General Farm Commodities, Risk Management, and Credit. Is also vice chair of the full Agriculture Committee and a most recently appointed member of the Rules Committee. I appreciate him joining us. I know Rules is busy tonight, so please recognize Representative Austin Scott for 3 minutes.
Well, thank you, Chairman G.T. Thompson. You're doing a wonderful job. And Mr. Speaker, I rise today to express my unwavering support for our nation's farmers and to emphasize the importance of the Farm Bill. Let me be clear. If you're a person who eats, and I suspect everyone is, then you should care about the Farm Bill. The Farm Bill sets a foundation of support for America's farmers and ranchers who produce the food and the fiber that we depend on a daily basis. Right now, farmers are struggling with rising input costs that make it more difficult for them to produce the food that we need. The House Agriculture Committee must make major improvements to Title I in the Farm Bill and address the impact that high input prices are having on America's farm families. The farm safety net in Title I has decreased due to the increases in production costs, and current reference prices for most commodities do not reflect the increased cost of farming today. The current statutory reference prices were established in the 2014 Farm Bill using 2012 cost of production data. I want to say that again. We're using the 2012 data to determine the point at which support under price loss coverage kicks in if the market prices fall below the reference price during a time when producers are seeing record high input costs. This has created a no-win situation for our farmers and is vital to our country that they are able to do their jobs. No part of the farm safety net should guarantee a profit. The farmers know this. It's something our producers agree on. But if reference prices don't move, then our producers are effectively left with no stop-loss assistance in the event of a commodity collapse. Supporting our farmers through increased reference prices in the Farm Bill means that we support those who grow the crops to sustain our food supply. Without reference price increases in this next Farm Bill, there's not enough assistance from Congress and the USDA for many farm families in our country to continue to grow the food and the fiber that we depend on. As the chairman of the General Farm Commodities Risk Management and Credit Subcommittee, I'm committed to making significant improvements to Title I and give the support that our farmers deserve. Thank you, and thank you for your work, GT, on this Farm Bill. I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. Now please recognize the gentleman from Alabama 2, Representative Barry Moore, member of the House Agriculture Committee. Representative Moore for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Consumer prices up 19.4% since Biden took office, and inflation 3.5% in the last year. Producers simply can't afford this administration's bad policies. My top priority this farm cycle has been addressing reference prices, which Mr. Scott just referred to. Safety net programs are the bedrock of risk management for producers, and current reference prices are not sufficient to help producers manage risk against these razor-thin margins thanks to Bidenomics. As input prices go up and commodity prices go down, producers rely on these reference prices and a farm safety net to stay in business. I have seen this in my own family, hearing about the challenges my cousin, who is a young farmer, has had just getting started. I heard similar concerns during the Farm Bill listening sessions that I had all across the district. That's why we need these inclusions in the Farm Bill. They will deliver for producers in Alabama and across America. We need this legislation to fund the farm safety net, promote market development, increase feral swine control efforts, and modernize data collection for our foresters, protect crop insurance, and expand rural broadband deployment. I urge my colleagues to help our producers battle Biden's inflation. And before I end, I want to say, I hope you'll all join me in praying for Israel in the wake of this horrific attack they face this weekend. May God bless them, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your leadership. And with that, sir, I'll yield back.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Speaker, can I inquire how much time remains?
The gentleman has 33 minutes remaining.
Very good. Please recognize the gentleman from Representative Mark Alford from Missouri 4th Congressional District for 3 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you so much to our distinguished chairman, G.T. Thompson. And I want to thank him especially for bringing our listening tour for the Ag Committee to the great state of Missouri this past August. We had a great time. People got to have their say on what they wanted in the Farm Bill, and it was a truly bipartisan effort. I'll never forget Jonathan Jackson coming there from the Ag Committee in Sedalia and milking a cow for the very first time. Is truly a sight to behold. Look, I'm not a farmer. I don't even play one on TV. But I am an American who understands the importance of agriculture, that our food security is our national security. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, today I rise to express my strong support of passing a robust farm bill, a lifeline for our nation's farmers and for the nourishment of our citizens. My home state of Missouri boasts 87,000 farms, the second highest number of farms in the United States of America. Ag is the backbone of our nation, and through the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, SNAP, we bridge the gap between the produce of our farmers and the tables of more than 41 million Americans. You see, SNAP is more than just a program, Mr. Speaker. It is a pact with our citizens, ensuring that no truly deserving, qualified American goes to bed hungry. Yet it's our duty. It's our duty to safeguard the integrity of SNAP. It is our duty to make sure that every dollar is spent judiciously, reaching only the hungry and not lost to fraud, waste, and abuse. Mr. Speaker, it's estimated that about $34 million per day is lost to erroneous payments, some $13 billion a year, where in some cases recipients intentionally cheat the system to obtain more benefits than they are eligible for. These fraudulent activities strain the program's resources and undermine its integrity, affecting those who are genuinely in need. Our farmers are held to integrity standards through their use of programs like crop insurance. It is incumbent that states and recipients are held to similar standards. With more than 80% of the Farm Bill's funding dedicated to SNAP, any fraud is unacceptable. We must incentivize people to live a healthy lifestyle, eliminate waste, and firmly tackle abuse without punishing those truly in need. That's why, Mr. Speaker, it's time to wash SNAP with a program that is pro-work, pro-accountability, pro-sustenance, and pro-health. That's exactly what Chairman Thompson and my colleagues on the House Ag Committee have been working on. It is time to pass the Farm Bill that backs our hardworking farmers and ranchers and keeps our food assistance programs both strong and honest. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
Well, I thank the gentleman. Thanks for his passion for I know, Missouri's #1 industry, which is agriculture, and #1 industry in this great nation. Now, I'm pleased to recognize a farmer, a mom, a wife, a grandmother, who represents Illinois' 15th Congressional District, a member of the Agriculture Committee, Representative Mary Miller, recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Thompson. Thank you for your leadership on the Agriculture Committee. As one of the few family farmers left in Congress, I understand firsthand the challenges faced by farmers. My husband and I expanded our farm in the 80s when interest rates were at their highest and the farm safety net wasn't as strong as it is today. Crop insurance has given us and many fellow farmers the security needed to mitigate risks and continue producing the food and fuel that keeps America running. We must be steadfast in our commitment to protecting the needs of farmers and rural America in the Farm Bill, including protecting crop insurance. Today, our family farm faces the same challenges as many across the country. Increasing land prices are making it nearly impossible for our sons to expand. Biden's EPA threatens our no-till practice, which is best for soil conservation. Inflation and Biden's relentless attack on American energy has increased our input costs. With all the uncertainty that farmers face, they need the certainty of a 5-year farm bill. Over the past year, we have diligently laid the groundwork to pass a robust farm bill that safeguards farmers' interests, while Biden has been focusing on the green bad deal and DEI nonsense. It is vital for us to pass a farm bill that puts farmers first. Thank you, and I yield back.
Well, I thank the gentlelady for her service and her dedication to agriculture. Now I'm pleased to recognize the gentleman from Indiana's 4th Congressional District. He is the chairman for the Subcommittee on Conservation, Research, and Technology. Dr. Jim Baird, please recognize the chairman for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate all that you do for our committee. And Mr. Speaker, since my first day here in Congress, I've been a relentless advocate for hardworking farmers, ranchers, producers, and agricultural professionals who form the backbone of our country. It is their dedication and resilience that fuels our economy and feeds the entire nation. Today, the world relies on American producers more than ever. As geopolitical tensions abroad disrupt supply chains and heighten the threat of global food insecurity, it has never been more important to give our producers the peace of mind that they deserve. That's why I'm pleased to see we are making progress on this year's Farm Bill and beginning to move this legislation through the committee. This has not been a simple process. However, I am thankful for Chairman Thompson and everyone on the Ag Committee for their hard work. Over the past year, we have held listening sessions with stakeholders across the country to build on the success of the 2018 Farm Bill and prepare for the future of American agriculture. As chairman of the Agriculture Subcommittee on Conservation, Research, and Biotechnology, I am actually aware of the opportunities we have to deliver new agricultural innovations that will address food insecurity, eliminate hunger, and grow the economy. It is my hope that we can continue crafting this legislation, that we will prioritize agricultural research, that will reduce our dependence on foreign inputs, create thousands of good-paying jobs, and utilize our nation's abundant agricultural resources. I look forward to working with my colleagues on the Agricultural Committee to ensure that we meet the needs of all of our producers and prioritize research that will help America be the global leader in agriculture. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Well, I thank the gentleman. Thank you for your leadership on the committee and with your subcommittee as well.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Baird. Now I'm pleased to recognize a good friend, a member of the House Agriculture Committee from California's 1st Congressional District. I had the privilege of spending quite a bit of time with Mr. LaMalfa. We had a very, what I would have to describe as a very emotional visit to Paradise, California, where so many lives, almost 100 lives were lost due to wildfire, and an opportunity to ride in a combine on his rice fields in Northern California. And all of it, I really appreciate the opportunity. He serves as the chairman of the House Agriculture Forestry Subcommittee from California 1st Congressional District, Representative Doug LaMalfa, and we're recognized for 3 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I greatly appreciate your work on this committee and the hard work on the Farm Bill and the demeanor with which you bring it. You know, you bring people together with your effort on this, and all of us coming together to have these field hearings and listening sessions around the country since the beginning of last year in this session. So I think that's been very productive and points out a strong bipartisan effort to make this Farm Bill come together and be successful this year. And we need it to do so because we need that certainty for all the industries. So I'm pleased to be able to be the chairman of the Subcommittee on Forestry. Thanks to Chairman Thompson on that, as that's a very important issue in Northern California, where my district is, but all over the West, and indeed for the whole country. Now, we should be deeply concerned about the state of our nation's timber industry, the industry itself, as well as the condition of our forests. We have many mills closing down lately because they can't economically make it. And it's not due to their business practices per se, but more so the practices of the Forest Service and the available lands and timber harvest they need. This demands our immediate attention in the Farm Bill, and as many people don't know, USDA oversees the U.S. Forest Service, so that's why this element is in the Farm Bill. So as I'm depicting here in these posters here, you see what the difference between managed forests and unmanaged forests, what they look like. So on the left is a forest that's been thinned and properly maintained. On the right, a still green forest, but is so dense, birds can't fly through it, deer can't run through it, which this used to actually be the norm. But over 50 plus years of neglect in our forested areas have allowed this to happen, because at the same time we put out fire, which is a good thing, except for when fire can be a useful tool at the right time of year under the right conditions for forest thinning. We need to have an active management on that. Forest Service oversees 193 million acres in its purview, and at best it's treating 1% of those acres per year. That's why it's extremely important we have private industry as a partner, indeed the quarterback of carrying the ball on this issue for this industry. We recently had a field hearing in South Dakota with my colleague Dusty Johnson. We met up with the Nyman Enterprises, the Nyman family, a family company who's been there many years. They've just announced layoffs now because they can't get the number of board feet they need to sustain their business there. It's not just about business, it's about getting the wood products and paper products and being a partner in helping our forests to be safer, cleaner, healthier, the whole works. And so if they're having to lay people off, that means a small town of Spearfish, South Dakota, is going to suffer badly economically. It means our forest is going to suffer due to ultimately overcrowding, like you see on the right here, and make it an extreme fire danger. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. We need to have stronger activity. We need Forest Service to get cracking on this. Part of the elements we've had in recent farm bills and in this coming farm bill are a continued expansion of categorical exclusions and utilizing them. These exclusions allow the bypassing of a lot of red tape in permitting and such. It doesn't mean they're going to do anything environmentally unsoundly. It just means we don't need to take 2 years to study every time we want to do a timber harvest. We already know what to do. They require NEPA so many times. We need to have a faster process to get this done. We're falling farther and farther behind. We're losing the industry. We're losing the forests. And so we need to have more categorical exclusions. We need to have more pilot projects like we had at the south, the Tahoe area. It was about a 10,000 acre one. Now, what happened there is that work was done in thinning that area. Fire hit that area, and it knocked the fire down to make it where it wasn't a devastating fire in that 10,000 acres. It actually, they were able to put it out. And so we have the ability to expand the good neighbor policy, which enabled local governments and tribes to help manage the land for the Forest Service since they're so far behind on this issue. We have an expansion of that in the bill as well. So what we're doing in the Farm Bill is just common sense things to make our forest practices and forest health and have an industry at the same time. Yes, it's good to talk about having an industry. This isn't just big timber. This is something that we need. All these small towns in my area in Northern California and all over the West that have been boarded up, so to speak, from losing the industry. We need folks to be able to come back and do this work to help us, because just recently the U.S. has gone, because China's reeling things back in, from the #2 importer, now the U.S. is the #1 importer of wood products. What are we doing here? We have so much burning up in our backyard and going to waste. We need to put the people to work in our country and our forests, make them better, safer, and have an industry and jobs in this country. So it's so important that we have these elements in this farm bill and we get it passed, along with all the other good things for agriculture, for farming, to have a stable food supply. Yes, he mentioned I was a rice grower myself in Northern California, 5 generations now. We need all the above on that in order to have a stable food supply so our country is strong and secure. The same goes with our forestry, because you see success on the left here and impending disaster on the right in this poster. Mr. Chairman, thank you so much for the time and allowing me to be part of this tonight.
Well, I thank the gentleman from California for your leadership on forestry and all of American agriculture. Now, please recognize one of our senior members on the Agriculture Committee from North Carolina 7, Representative David Rouser, for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Speaker, North Carolina is blessed to be one of the most agriculturally diverse states in our great country. Contributing more than $103 billion to our state's economy, agriculture has always been North Carolina's #1 industry. But it's even bigger than that for this reason. Food security is national security. In other words, the economic impact of agriculture doesn't even come close to measuring its true benefit to America and the world. Today, our farm families are struggling just like every other American is feeling the inflation pinch. In the case of American agriculture, it's even worse. Our farm families are expected to see a 27% decrease in net farm income this year. They're facing as much uncertainty as at any time in American history. We have a crisis unfolding in farm country because of record high input and labor cost, driven by regulatory assault on the industry, as well as stagnant or declining prices for both crops and livestock, eliminating any profit margin. This, by the way, is at the same time every American household is paying more for food than ever before. This is why a strong farm bill is so critically important for both farmers and consumers. It could not come at a more crucial time. Important programs necessary to help our farm families survive, to feed and clothe America, including a commodity title, healthy meals for low-income families, rural development programs so important to infrastructure and job growth in rural areas, animal disease prevention, trade promotion, and key investments in research and extension services for our producers, along, I might add, with other important provisions. All must be updated and improved to meet today's challenges in American agriculture. We have the safest, most affordable food supply in the world, and we must keep it that way. A strong farm bill is key for that to continue. A strong farm bill is America first. We should never forget that. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for being such a strong leader and critical voice for agriculture as we work towards a farm bill that properly addresses the challenges of those who provide for our food and fiber. I yield back.
Thank the gentleman for his leadership and dedication to this great industry that serves every American family. Now, please recognize the gentleman from New York 23rd Congressional District, a neighbor of mine, neighbor of the North, Representative Nick Langworthy, for 3 minutes.
Well, thank you very much, Chairman Thompson, for hosting tonight's special order hour, focusing on the consequential piece of legislation for rural America, the Farm Bill. And also thank you for your work making sure that we have an adequate farm bill and all the travel and the efforts that you've put into this at this point. In Western New York and the Southern Tier, agriculture not only drives our economy, but it's a way of life and a proud tradition for many families that I'm proud to represent. I fight for more than 6,000 farms in my district as we develop each piece of this legislation, especially as they struggle with the high input costs and shrinking margins created by President Biden's reckless economic policies. More specifically, the dairy farms in my district, they need better policy solutions that offer them a stronger safety net and more predictable pricing. As outlined in the bill that I introduced earlier this Congress, H.R. 1756, the Dairy Pricing Opportunity Act, we need to ensure that this next farm bill authorizes reporting of the cost and the yield information from dairy processors. It also has been great to see the recent recognition of the role of our farmers, ranchers, and dairies in what they play in our nation's nutrition and health. This next farm bill should also aim to increase access to dairy products for SNAP recipients, as outlined in the Dairy Nutrition Incentive Act, which I'm co-leading with my colleague from California, Representative Jim Costa. It's important that we empower and encourage households to consume healthy but underconsumed foods, such as milk and other nutrient-rich dairy products. Western New York and the Southern Tier have a proud history of dairy farming, and I want to ensure that dairy remains a core component of our efforts, as 90% of Americans fall short of meeting the recommended intake of dairy. And similarly, I've been leading the effort to expand access to New York maple products with my Bipartisan Maple Act, as I'm proud to represent hundreds of maple farms and even had the chance to visit many of them last month during New York's Maple Week. It's a great product, and the legislation would add maple syrup to the eligible products under the Senior Farmers Market Nutrition Program. The Farm Bill doesn't stop at dairy production or specialty crops. It also focuses on developing our rural communities that are so often forgotten here in Washington, D.C. Title VI of the Farm Bill authorizes programs that are meant to foster economic growth in our rural communities, like the Rural Innovation Stronger Economy, or the RISE grant program. This program has been instrumental in offering grant assistance to foster high-wage job creation and accelerate the formation of new business in qualifying low-income rural areas. While the RISE program has garnered success and popularity, it's important to recognize that job accelerators typically provide specialized training for individuals seeking new skills to secure employment in new business. The explosion of cutting-edge technologies has presented rural areas with challenges in adaptation, resulting in a widening workforce gap and diminishing economic prospects. These challenges compound existing workforce issues in rural America, including limiting access to education and workforce development opportunities and mismatches between available jobs and the skills of our local workers. In response to this need, we've introduced H.R. 7015, the Careers Act, to build upon the RISE grant program by allowing funds to support career pathway programs in industry or sector partnerships in specific industries, including public utilities, healthcare, manufacturing, agribusiness, and others. Opening this program to industry partnerships could create more collaboration between employers, educators, and stakeholders to address workforce challenges and develop tailored training programs, ensuring a skilled workforce that meets industry needs. The Careers Act champions skills development, innovation, and collaboration, empowering rural communities to thrive. We need to ensure that Title VI of this Farm Bill will do more to close the skills gap and support our rural communities. In all, I'm proud to be a voice for rural upstate New York, Western New York, and the Southern Tier. Throughout the process of developing a final bill that not only supports American agriculture, but builds a better future for everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for all your efforts, and I yield back.
Well, I thank the gentleman from New York who was doing a great job serving this rural America, his district, and American agriculture. Now, please recognize a gentleman, no stranger to agriculture, actually, being from the Central Valley of California, a farmer himself, representing California's 13th Congressional District, Representative John Duarte. Please recognize for 3 minutes.
Well, Chairman Thompson, it is an absolute honor to be here to support your farm bill and its moving forward today. As a fourth-generation California farmer, working side by side with my next generation, the fifth-generation California farmers in my family, nothing is more important right now than to get farm security and farm stability for Americans' farmers. As a California farmer, I've got some of my friends right now, best-of-breed friends, calling me, telling me, if we can't get stability in our ag prices, if we can't get our costs under control, if we can't get foreign markets opened up again, this might be our last year, where the bank might have us sell property. We're looking at a commercial real estate crisis in America today. Well, let me tell you firsthand, There is a agricultural credit crisis coming in America today because we're on the heels. We're on the heels of COVID. We're on the heels of supply chain disruption. We're on the heels of Bidenflation. We're still under it. And all of this is stacking up against farmers. While American families have higher SNAP benefits than they've ever enjoyed before, and so many of us in the Ag Committee support SNAP program to keep American children and families with robust nutrition, we have produce and protein leaving the dinner plates of working families. We have cereal companies today advertising breakfast cereal for dinner. Again, as SNAP benefits are higher than they've ever been. Maintain their plussed up status after COVID. And many of us on the Ag Committee support that, both sides of the aisle. So what do we need? We need a farm bill that produces American abundance, that promotes American farmers' innovations, that allows American farmers to produce for national markets. We're shut out of China with retaliatory ag tariffs. We're fighting back on that, but we need market access promotion. We need the specialty crops block grants plussed up to help American farmers and specialty crop producers find the new markets they need. On the Gates Act, we want to solve big environmental problems, big ecological challenges with farming. Well, we need to make sure the biggest farmers can do that. So for those who are true farmers that make over 25% of their income from agriculture, we need to allow the conservation program access irrespective of income limits. We can do this. Chairman Thompson, Speaker, thank you so much for the opportunity to promote American Farm Bill today. We can get this done. I yield back.
Mr. Speaker, can I inquire how much time, if any, remains?
You have 7 minutes remaining.
Okay, very good. Well, I thank the gentleman from California for being a valued member of the House Agriculture Committee, for your work, your leadership, your service. Mr. Speaker, we've just heard a multitude of reasons why we need to pass this farm bill. This is a farm security, food security, and national security bill. Food security is national security. You know, I like to, my definition of American agriculture is pretty straightforward. American agriculture today is science, technology, and innovation. America's farmers have suffered enough. They can't wait, and neither can we. Over the past 3 years, the Committee on Agriculture has traveled all over the country to both Republican and Democrat-held districts with one goal in mind: to listen and report back. Or as I like to say, use what God has given us: 2 ears, 1 mouth. So when we go out, that's why we call them listening tours, to be able to take the opportunity to listen from those folks, those hardworking families who are providing us food and fiber, building materials, and energy resources all over this great nation. We've been to at least 40 different states and 1 territory. Probably some states, if you heard tonight, multiple times. So somewhere in the neighborhood of, I've had the privilege of chairing probably close to 85 listening sessions around this great nation. And why would we do that? Because we're building a farm bill listening to the voices outside the Beltway of Washington, to the people who work so hard, some of them 7 days a week, to provide what is essential for this great nation and for the families of this great nation. Frankly, our process has been transparent, it's been collaborative, and it's been done in good faith. Mr. Speaker, I don't think there's a greater return on investment for a dollar spent in Washington than one spent through the Farm Bill and agriculture. And I don't say that lightly. I point to the facts of the number of jobs that are created. It's the #1 industry in, quite frankly, in almost every state, and certainly in this nation. The economic activity that is generated through the agriculture industry, both production and processing, and everything really within that food supply chain. The amount of taxes that are generated by farms, ranches, forestry operations, agribusinesses that are paid at every level of government to really fund what we hope are the essential services. It is the food security that is provided that results in national security. There's no more slippery slope to national insecurity than food insecurity. That's obvious to see when you look around the world today. We are blessed as a nation because of our agriculture industry and the hardworking families that are working in it. But it's also, with American agriculture being based on science and technology innovation, it's about a better environment and a cleaner climate. When you look at the data that shows that the American agriculture, and that's livestock, that's plants, that's trees, because trees are a crop, result in the sequestration of 6.1 gigatons of carbon annually, which is 10.1% more than what it generates. There's no better climate champions in the world than the American farmer. Farmer, rancher, forester. And so we have a lot to be proud of when it comes to this industry. And again, there's not a dollar that is has a better return on investment than one that is invested in American agriculture within this farm bill. Recoups tremendously just in terms of the number of jobs, economic activity, and the taxes that are generated as a result of those entities. Too often in Washington, the naysayers and the pundits drown out our progress on key issues, not on the Agriculture Committee. There really is time to iron out the details, mark up the Farm Bill, and get it across the floor, and have the Senate do their job next. There's 12 titles to this Farm Bill. There's a lot to it, and we understand that. It's very diverse because it's everything that has to do with agriculture and, quite frankly, rural America. It's got the safety net program, and as I've said, food security is national security. And a strong commodity title ensures that Americans can continue to produce the safest, most abundant, and most affordable food supply in the world. In recent years, farm income has been on the decline. USDA's own data expects farm income to fall by $80 billion by the end of 2022 to the end of 2024. This is the greatest two-year loss in the net farm income in history. This Farm Bill can do something about that. Persistent inflation and rising costs of production warrant new investments in farm safety net. A robust Title I aids the American producer in managing the risk of low prices or declining farm revenues. On the research side, American agriculture is science, technology, and innovation, the Farm Bill promotes science, technology, and innovation, which are necessary for training the next generation of agriculturalists. It's necessary for keeping American agriculture at the forefront of productivity and maintaining our competitive edge with China. It helps us deal with sometimes deteriorating weather conditions. It helps us in areas where soil health is not the finest, of being able to turn that around. It helps us to be able to produce more on less acreage, which is what the trend has been. Trade, incredibly important part of the Farm Bill as well, and the Farm Bill trade programs have worked to build and maintain and expand markets for American agricultural products around the world. American producers not only feed, fuel, and clothe our nation, but provide for consumers around the world. And the Biden administration's trade agenda, or lack thereof, has left America's producers with their hands tied, unable to engage in free trade and pursue new or expanded markets. And so this Farm Bill is an opportunity to bolster those markets. We've heard about forestry tonight, the livestock program we've heard about this evening. Mr. Speaker, there's just, I'm looking forward here, without a doubt, before May of moving this Farm Bill out of the House Agriculture Committee, and then we'll get it to the floor, and we'll get it to the Senate, and we'll get it to the President's desk. And so we appreciate your presiding this evening, Mr. Speaker, and yield back whatever time might remain.
The gentleman yields back. Does the gentleman have a motion?
Yes, I do, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House do now adjourn.
The question is on the motion to adjourn. Those in favor say yea. Those opposed say no. The yeas have it. The motion is adopted. Accordingly, the House stands adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow for morning hour debate.